Hello, hello, hello. One second, actually, I need to adjust my mic. Alright, hello. We are back. Part 8. We're in 8 parts of this game already. That's... feels weird. I can't believe it's been that long since I started it. Anyways... hope you enjoyed that. I can't help but play Red Velvet whenever I can. I really do love the song. Anyways. We are on to Act 3 of Lilly's route in Katawa Shoujo. What is it called again? Present. We had past, now we have present. Alright. I figured, actually, I should have been doing this from the start. I should give a little recap of basically what we did in the last episode of Katawa Shoujo. In the last episode of Katawa Shoujo, it was Act 2 of Lilly's, where so Act 1 was ended with the festival, and then in Act 2 we get more about we had Hanako's birthday. Lilly and Hiseo got much closer. And including at Hanako's birthday, they all got exceedingly drunk. And then there was lunch on the rooftop with Emi and Rin, which went kind of poorly after Hiseo had a heart flutter. After which Lilly made a little origami crane for Hiseo out of a sandwich wrapper. And then Act 2 ended with Lilly and Akira leaving Japan for Scotland to visit Lilly's family as one of her aunts got sick. So, Act 3 is going to be Hiseo without Lilly around. No Lilly around for the start of this act. Let's get into it. I rest my chin on my hand as I absent-mindedly look out the window. Yet another of Mutoi's lectures droning on and on, as if it were endless. The summer sky is almost alluring in its bright cerulean splendor. Only the odd passing cloud breaks up the deep blue expanse. This feeling of longing is probably the outdoor side of me yearning to escape. Nikai, could you enter this? That side of me is lost to the past now, although. In that case, I think it used the ane suffix. Ain suffix. I forgot this is science. Ain suffix. Correct. Moving on, the suffix for... As my attention towards Mutoi slips once again, I spot Misha giving me an enthusiastic thumbs up, and nod at her to settle her down. Hello, Dew on the Grass. Yes, Mutoi is actually best girl. We all love Mutoi. It's been a handful of days since Lilly left for Scotland, days which have passed relatively peacefully. Life largely continued as usual, in contrast to what I'd expected. While thoughts of her have danced around on the edge of my mind since she left, present events managed to subdue them, at least for the time being. So I find myself idly chatting with Hanako, as usual, when lunchtime finally rolls by. Are the later ones in the series good as well? Not really. You're probably best off just sticking to the original. His later books didn't live up to it, other than maybe God Emperor. Thanks, I wasn't really sure if... As Hanako steps to the side, I see Shizune stride up in her typical business-like manner, flanked by her ever-present bright-haired shadow. Try as I might, I can't read any hint of their intent from their faces. Shizune's poker face and Misha's seemingly boundless cheerfulness are a devilish combination. Fragilities, thank you for the follow. Morning, Shizune. Misha? Hi. I accentuate the greeting with a nod to Shizune in order to get the point across. She promptly and curtly returns the gesture to both of us. It's been a long while since I've really talked to either of them. For a while, I thought they might be avoiding me, but I eventually came to the conclusion that Shizune really isn't the type to do so. Morning. Shi-chan says that Mutoi wants to see you sometime. Because of this statement, my face contorts as if I'd just eaten spoiled food, giving Misha no end of amusement. Anyone would think you were in trouble, Hi-chan. You may not be aware of it, but you have the least to worry about of anyone in the class. What an unexpected vote of confidence. Even Hanako nods hesitantly to affirm the point. Thanks, I'll keep that in mind. There was something I wanted to ask you, though. And what might that be, Hi-chan? I have a feeling this won't go over well, but here goes. Is there any reason why you and Lilly don't get along? It seems like even a little civility would help you both in your duties. Shizune's cold stare after Misha happily signs the word stops me in my tracks. In hindsight, I really could have worded that better. Out of the corner of my eye, I'm sure I see Hanako move back, just a little. Thankfully, Shizune notices this and lets her temper dissipate as she forcefully runs her hand through her hair to let off steam. Perfectly on cue, Misha begins interpreting the second Shizune's arms begin to move. I would say that such matters aren't relevant to you, but since you seem to have befriended Lilly. She pauses to adjust her glasses, evidently attempting to articulate her point in the best possible manner. Well, I assume the same of her. I cannot call my own views on the matter unbiased. Suffice to say, we were closer before than we are now. Shizune makes quick gestures to Misha to stop her from interpreting, then has a quick meeting with her before proceeding. The fact that the two can communicate so easily, yet so secretly right in front of us is slightly disconcerting. Hanako seems to share my curiosity at the proceedings, looking on with thinly masked interest. As they finish their opaque conversation, Misha looks slightly deflated. I guess her opinion on the matter wasn't followed. Shi-chan says you should ask Lilly about it, as she doesn't want to be the one that gets you involved. Well, I'll just have to ask her after she gets back. At least I got some information out of Shizune. The two have been on close terms. The two having been on close terms means that they weren't always at each other's throats, or at least not quite to this extent. I understand. Thanks anyway. With a nod and a farewell, the two break away and walk out the door, no doubt headed straight for the student council room. Could have gone worse, I suppose. Hanako lets out a long breath, relieved at the confrontation's resolution. I can't say I blame her. I'll see you later then. Yeah, I'll meet you in the tea room. See ya. With that, she waves and joins the trickle of students leaving the classroom. Nikai, could I speak with you for a moment? Delivered in his typical monotone manner, he apparently decided that it needed a reminder to see him already. Eventually, I finish packing up my things. By the time I reach his desk, the classroom is close to empty. Yes, sir? He looks up, taking measure of my face before giving an awkward, rather obviously acted chuckle. No need to feel guilty. You're not in trouble. I just want to ask you something. I've asked a few of the other students so far. That's something, at least. For a moment, I'd thought my maxim of keeping my head down and pen up had failed me. So, what did you want to talk about? To start with, what do you think of your progress in this class so far? Good? Bad? I detest that kind of question. For a fair amount of time, I try to think of a response that is neither pathetically humble nor cocky. I'd say I'm doing okay. The work doesn't seem too hard, and I'm doing better on the test than I thought I would. That's a good answer. A correct one, too. I give a mental sigh of relief at his satisfaction. To say that I don't gain a little pride from his comment would be a blatant lie. In the maelstrom of thoughts clouding my mind after learning that to be transferred to Yamaku, my school grade seemed utterly unimportant. Being entirely clueless as to what skill level would be assumed of me, once I actually got here, I was hugely relieved when I found out that I understood well enough the schoolwork we'd be doing. I know your circumstances might have thrown a wrench in the works, but have you given any thought to your future? My future? What you'd like to do as a profession. Do you have any thoughts of where you'd like to be in 10 or 20 years' time? I wouldn't be surprised if you covered this ground in your previous school, but I don't have any record of it if you have. I suppose the last year of high school is the time when students would need to be thinking about such things. To be honest, I really haven't lent it much thought, compared to my immediate situation. Catching on to my thinking, Mutoi speaks up.
It's okay if you haven't decided on anything specific yet. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of your classmates were still undecided, after all. Maybe pursue one of your talents?
He's rather obviously trying to squeeze an answer out of me, and something about his previous wording makes me suspicious. He didn't seem to be intent on asking everybody like this, so he must have some kind of selection criteria. I'd guess our grades in his class. Well, something in science might be the path of least resistance. His face brightens, no doubt pleased at the thought of a prize student following his subject as a career path.
Good. Having a general idea is the first step. I would advise you to think on it, though.
I will. Things are kind of settling down, which will help.
Good to hear. Oh, and I've noticed that Ikizawa's attendance and grades have improved since we came to be friends. I'd like to thank you for that.
I'm surprised you noticed we knew each other. He gives a chuckle as awkward as his smile. This guy really has no idea how to properly act around others. Every facial movement seems like an act of careful but misdirected choreography.
You could say that having a general idea of who knows whom is part of a teacher's job.
Catching himself before he goes off on a tangent, he loudly coughs into his hand.
I'm sure you have things to do, though, so I'll stop there. Please do think about where you're headed from here, as you don't have long to go before you finish high school.
I will. Thanks. The brief talk ended, I take my leave. He goes back to fussing with the teaching materials on his desk. This is one of the times I'm envious of Lilly, almost maddeningly so. To have one's future so clear and so assured, yet working towards it from such a young age. It's an idea so utterly irreconcilable with my own thoughts, mired in the present day just as they've always been. I feel like my Butoy voice was very, very good there. I really got the deep voice I've been trying to go for. Walking through the lobby to the cafeteria, I silently rue my daily routine having been completely thrown off. It had seemed like a normal day. I arrived in class before most, due to waking early and having become quite adept at chucking down my pills without choking as I get ready for the day. But as students trickled in, one never materialized. Hanako. I step inside, my eyes scanning the expanse of the cafeteria in search of a suitable place to take a seat. It's a task made more difficult by the groups of students moving about and busily talking. Yeah. A hand pounds my back hard a couple of times, severely winding me. I couldn't care less about the culprit as I focus my thoughts on my chest in a near-automatic reaction. My hand instinctively tightens on my breast, and I start going through the steps I rehearse in my mind every other day. Breathe steadily, in and out. With a measure of relief, I can slowly feel my chest becoming less tense. By the time I look back up, my face is covered in sweat from the experience. Hey, man, are you okay? God damn it! Don't do that, you idiot! He retreats back, an expression of unease written on his face. In hindsight, I probably shouldn't have barked at him, considering he had no way to know. I give a sigh and right myself with some difficulty. Sorry, I just have some chest problems. Sharp knocks aren't good. It seems strange to see him so upset. The fact that I can't do anything about it irritates me. Let's go get lunch. Okay, it's good to have some company for once. We start off to the serving line. One good thing is that Kenji and I can make small talk nowadays, as opposed to my only interaction with him being anti-feminist lectures. Seems like it'd be hard to find an empty table. There's a few people I wouldn't mind sitting with. Nobody's like you, though. I feel a shiver run through my spine. Clarify that now. They don't listen. Their minds are closed. It's the media, man. The goddamn brainwashing mainstream feminist fascist media. He takes a breath, and I savor the second of silence. Damn, they control everything. Everything but you and me. I relax a little while we grab our food and drink. So, what have you got for me? Huh? Come on, you've been hanging around Satoy and that other chick for ages now. Rumors are all over my class, and probably some of the others, too. Eavesdropping isn't a good habit. Let me guess. You never do it? Not even when you're bored? Really? Well, fine. Point taken. Both of us stopped to have soup ladled into a couple of small bowls and placed onto our trays. The concoction that lands into the bowl looks pretty questionable, but at least it smells reasonably good. As we take our seats at a miraculously free table, I try to think of something that would actually interest him at all. I hope I can come up with an acceptable topic. I've found an answer to that question you asked a couple of weeks back. Where Lilly's non-Japanese half comes from, that is. Good man. It's Russia, right? Totally Russia. Scotland. He's visibly stopped in his tracks. Scotland? Yeah, that was my reaction too. She can speak English fluently and everything. Damn it! Do you realize what this means? How terrifying this news is to me? I think he's hyperventilating. Passing out for a little while would probably make him more relaxed than he normally is. Oh shit, I forgot to open my guide. Whoopsie. Ignore his insane ramblings. I'm gonna save here too. Double check because I'm paranoid. Ignore his insane ramblings. I dig into my food, hoping he'll take the hint from my silence. I just lost 1,000 yen, man. 1,000 yen. Damn, this is the worst day ever. No such luck. You're kidding me. You made a bet about her nationality? One of the dudes in my class was bugging me about it. I gave him some of my wisdom, and he had the audacity to say my logic was wrong. So what did he think? Germany or something. Doesn't matter. What matters is my 1,000 yen. Damn, this day is ruined thanks to her. What a bitch. He looks utterly devastated as he wolfs down several clumps of his soggy, soy-soaked rice. It only takes a few mouthfuls before he pokes his chopsticks at me, stabbing the air repeatedly in revelation. Why would... Didn't your mother ever tell you not to speak with your mouth full? He gives me a dirty look before choking down the rest of the food left in his mouth and taking a gulp of juice. It's rather unsightly. Remembering my own food sitting in front of me, I decide to get to the task of eating the cafeteria food over and done with as fast as possible. The sooner I do so, the sooner the experience will be over. So as I was saying, why would anyone want to live in that place anyway? I mean, what is there to see? Grassy plains? That's it. Lots and lots of grassy plains. And men in kilts. I'm not sure which is worse, his food or his worldview. You can feel my face being dragged down by their combined weight. Not that he'd notice or care. It's not that bad. Why do you care about her so much anyway? She's just your class representative after all. He gives a malevolent chuckle. Were this anyone but Kenji, I'd feel uneasy at how he sounds. I finally found the chink in the Feminist Legion's army. It took a while, but I'm confident this is how we can bring down the whole system. I'm about to blow your mind. Are you ready? I tune out his ramblings for a moment as I finish my rice and start on the unappetizing soup. One taste is enough to confirm that it's cold. Ready as I'll ever be. I confirm that Lilly is in the Mafia. What? Alright, stay with me for a second here and I'll describe the scene. I wish I could do otherwise. Lily's there, walking down the street after school. You're not stalking her, are you? No, damn man, I do have some sense of self-preservation. But not dignity or morals or social standards. Yeah, anyway, as I was saying, this car pulls up next to her and guess who steps out? A man in a pinstripe suit. Waves her in, then the two leave, just like that. I tell you, man, she's under protection. Under protection. A man in... Oh, I can see where this is going now. It takes effort not to sigh in exasperation. Let me guess. This man was about average height, had a slightly slender build, had blonde hair, looked foreign, and smiled a lot. He looks positively stunned. I take advantage of the moment of quiet to quickly gulp a mouthful of cold soup. It seems you're more observant than I thought. Yes, I have chosen well. He giggles a little and nods to himself so dramatically that it looks comical. I can't tell whether that's intentional or not, and that fact makes me frown. This has important ramifications, you know. She really is connected to people like them, and we're smart about what we do with this information. We could turn this into our greatest weapon against the student council. Once you start rambling into conspiracy territory, my juice suddenly becomes of much more importance. Stop hitting right click. Only half listening to his pontifications, my mind drifts to the matter of Lilly and her antipathy for Shizune. The past between them is steadily becoming more coherent, but I'm not even sure if I should be learning of her past this way. Indeed, even if I do work out what went on, it really doesn't seem like my business to go and interfere. Damn, not having Lilly around is making my thoughts wander. I'm noticeably more bored and sullen without her company, and the same goes for Hanako. All we do during lunch anymore is eat and play chess. Come to think of it, I need to go check on Hanako after school too. Considering her much improved attendance, I'm guessing she's come down with something. Not quite it.
Oh, Nikai?
I stop as I'm about to leave the classroom, turning on the ball of my heel to meet Mutoi. He's holding out to me a couple of the worksheets we'd worked on during the day with his long, lanky arm.
Would you mind giving these to Ikizawa? I'd normally ask one of the girls to do it, but I assume you'll be checking on her?
For a moment I briefly consider the possibility of that being more than an innocent prediction. I quickly discard the idea, though, as it's hard to think of him acting in such a Machiavellian way. It's not in his nature. Sure, no problem. Walking up to the hallway of the girls' dormitory, several ideas of why Hanako's been absent float around my head. The most obvious of them is just a simple cold. That said, she may not even be sick at all. It's been almost a week since Lilly left, and despite her at least appearing to be normal, I've suspected she's somewhat more insecure about it than she's letting on. Eventually, I come to Hanako's dormitory room. Its simple brown door separating us. Her room's position next to Lily's is extremely convenient, and probably a large contributor to their meeting in the first place. Grimacing slightly at the prospect of her being sick, I rap my knuckles on the door. Silence. I listen intently for any sound of shuffling coming from inside, but I can't hear a thing. I knock on the door again, slightly harder. Still no answer. How strange. A door opens behind me. A freckled and somewhat scrawny underclassman I don't recognize comes out, is briefly taken off guard by my presence. Hi. Doing out a shave. Need a drink. Actually, this may be a rather fortuitous meeting. Hey, excuse me, do you know if Hanako's come out of her room today or not? She doesn't seem to be answering. Ikizawa is Ikizawa. Her not answering the door is totally normal. That tall foreign girl's the only person she'll ever talk to, after all. She gives a shrug before walking off down the hallway, having much more important matters to attend to than Hanako or me. Her dismissive attitude annoys me. Hanako must have a reputation as a hermit, a reputation that doesn't seem outright undeserved, at least in the time before we'd met. Scratching my head, I make one last attempt at getting Hanako to answer as I knock on the door one final time. Hanako, it's just me. Mutoi said to give you some stuff. For a while, the attempt seems just as unsuccessful as the last. Just before I slip the sheets under her door, though, I can hear the handle rattling. As the door opens halfway, I do my best to look Hanako over as quickly as possible. It's a task made somewhat more difficult by her oversized gown hiding so much of her body. She doesn't look sick, or at least not immediately so. To be honest, I'd have preferred that to her expression right now. Hi, Hanako. Mutoi wanted me to give you these since you weren't in class today. I hold out the loose sheets, which she tentatively takes in her hands. The way she moves is weird, devoid of thought, as if she were some kind of mechanical automaton rather than a living being. Are you okay? If you're feeling sick or anything, I could get the nurse. It feels almost pitiful to put on such a routine get-well-soon act. I can't think of anything else I could possibly do for her, though. She seems to collect herself a little at the notion, but only a little. I'm fine. Okay. An awkward silence follows, eventually ended by her nodding solemnly in farewell and closing the door. The entire experience feels surreal. More than a little put off, I wander back to my room and hope that she'll be better by tomorrow, despite not knowing exactly what's wrong with her. Once again, I find myself in front of Hanako's door after another of her unexplained absences from class. Nothing. Considering this is the second day in a row she's been like this, I'm starting to worry about her. Summoning my willpower, I decide to try one last way to get her to respond. Hanako, if you don't say anything, I'll go get the nurse for you. Go away. What? It's hard to tell whether her tone's one of depression, anger, or both. What in the world can I actually do to help her if she doesn't even want help? The message is clear enough. I can't just leave her like this, though. Just sitting in her room for days on end. Rubbing my temples in thought, I withdraw to my own room to think about how to proceed. Rationality is what's needed here, as an overreaction may just make matters worse. I dig around drawer after drawer of my desk, looking for where I put that damned piece of paper. Before she left, Lilly told me the number to call her on Scotland, and I wrote it down. Now that I need it, though, the damned thing is... here. Probably should have just entered it directly into my cell phone, come to think of it. Without further ado, I enter the numbers and anxiously press the call button. The fact the phone rings at all shows that I got the prefix for a call to Scotland right, at least. I've never made an international call before, so that's some comfort. Eventually, the phone picks up, a feminine voice I don't recognize on the other end. It's probably Lily's mother. Satoi? English? Suddenly finding myself unprepared, I realize I can't understand a word she says, either due to my limited vocabulary or her heavy accent. I should have anticipated this, since, according to Lilly, her mother is a native Scot. I soldier on in the hope she must know some Japanese, considering it's her daughter's native language. It's Hiseo Nakai speaking. An enthusiastic sound of realization can be heard as she recognizes the language. My feeling of relief is immense. I hit right-click again. Ah, you must be one of Lily's friends from school, correct? Even so, her accent means I have to concentrate to work out what she's saying. Yes, that's right. Pleased to speak to you, Mrs. Satao. It's so nice of her to find someone so polite. Lily, dear, it's for you. Her mother seems nice, if a little over-enthusiastic given the mundane situation. There's a small silence as Lily takes her time getting to the phone. In the distance, I can just make out her mother scolding her playfully for just getting up. Hello, Lily speaking. You sound awful. She makes a sound somewhere between a dying animal and a yawn. The one thing I did remember to check before calling was the time zone. It'd be pretty late in the morning over there, so she really has no excuse. Not feeling well? Just tired. What time is it there? Late afternoon. School finished for the day not long ago. You're really not a morning person, are you? I don't need you making fun of it as well. Takes me a measure of restraint not to laugh at her pained groan. Poor girl. How are you doing over there, then, bar the mornings? It's been enjoyable. After not meeting them for so long, just having a meal together with my parents is nice. Though the pool and the sheer size of the house might have something to do with that as well. Even if they're not in Japan, from the way it sounds, her family must be pretty wealthy to live so luxuriously. Are things all right with you and Hanako? Damn, I was hoping that wouldn't be brought up quite so quickly. I take a moment to try and sort out exactly how to describe the situation without causing her undue worry, but she picks up on that without a word being said. Hanako's not well, is she? How did you know? Because today is her birthday. I'd hoped she might have gotten at least a little better after coming to know you, but... How is she right now? She missed school yesterday and seemed out of sorts when I checked up on her. Today she missed school again and just told me to go away. Really got no idea what to make of it. Has this happened in the past? Is it related to her scarring in some way? Unfortunately so. Roughly the same thing happened last year when her birthday came up. As far as I can tell, it's because her parents died in the accident that caused her scarring. and Hanako blames herself for their deaths. She does seem to make sense. If she's blaming herself on her birthday, she may well be ruining the day she was ever born. The fact that Lilly seems so in the dark about it, though, almost to the extent that I am, is a surprise. So that's why she lives in the student dormitories as well. Has she told you any more about the accident? As close as we've come, she's barely told me anything about what happened. What I know about it is largely conjecture. She sounds depressed, almost defeated. Considering the trauma Hanako must have gone through, I really can't fault Lilly for not knowing. Nevertheless, she still seems to consider it a personal failing. Don't blame yourself, Lilly. Everything she's gone through. I know. Thank you, Hiseo. I'm sorry I can't be of more help to you. It's fine. I'll just give it some more thought. Thanks, and have a good time in Scotland. It's nothing. Thank you for taking care of Hanako. Okay. Bye. Goodbye. And with that, the line goes silent. Amid the seemingly only increased number of questions I can't answer, the most immediate is what Lilly was going to say. Oh. Oh no. I'm an idiot. She must have thought I was calling to talk with her, but I only asked for help with Hanako. Even more shameful than that thought is the fact that such an appraisal would be largely correct. Well, first things first. For now, I need to at least sort out Hanako and make sure that she's actually eating okay. These scenes are becoming a bit oddly familiar. The occasional passing students give badly hidden glances at the plate of food I carry to the female dormitories. It's hardly a meal to be proud of, only being an instant microwave meal from the convenience store, but it should at least fill her up. Eventually, I arrive outside of her room, after having to ward off a couple girls who jokingly tried to pilfer the food I'd taken so long to procure. I decide to forego knocking, since it was proven to be an utterly useless measure, and it's somewhat difficult to do with my hands full. Hanako, it's Hiseo. I know you're listening. I got some food for you. Silence, as I expected. I'll leave it beside your door. Please eat it at least, okay? There, I've said my piece. Now it's up to her. Putting the plate down, I walk back to my own room to eat my dinner. By the time I return to Hanako's dormitory, a good hour's passed. Thankfully, there isn't anything to be seen beside her door. I walk back, at least somewhat happier that she's eating. If she intends to get through this by herself, then being able to help, even if it's just in such a small way, is at least something. A little oddly familiar there. I sit reading in the library after school, turning page after page, barely registering the words written on each out of sheer boredom. With my cheek resting in my hand, I can't help noticing the slightly rough feeling against my palm. It won't be long before I'll need to get a razor. Giving up on reading, I simply let my head drop onto the book in front of me. Things have quieted down considerably since Hanako began attending school again. When she first returned to class, nothing was said nor done that wasn't part of the usual routine, and it's been the same way since. Neither of us desired to bring up her accident, so there simply wasn't any point in pursuing it. Thus, a few days went by, the daily grind continuing just as it had before. It's only natural that my mind would wander to other places, and more importantly, other people. That lily-shaped hole in the daily life of Hanako and me has been pretty noticeable for a while now. I'd be pleased to say that this has allowed me time to refine just what my thoughts on her exactly are, but alas, I've had no such luck. It doesn't help that many attempts to do so have led to the troublesome topic of Iwanako. Every time my thoughts drift into that direction, I reflexively try to think about something else. Why did this have to happen now? I turn and look up to the source of the tentative voice coming from behind me. Sorry, I didn't mean to disturb anyone. That's not it. Ah. I glance around the orange-tinted room, quickly realizing how silly my apology must have sounded. In the time I've spent thinking and lazing about in here, everyone's well and truly left. Library closing? If you don't want to go, I could keep it open a little bit longer. It's no trouble at all. Don't worry. I should get going anyway. Thanks. As I get up and begin to move off, I feel Yuko's eyes drilling into my back. Is there something wrong? You look depressed. Are you okay? Yuko nervously twists her fingers as she says this, unsure whether she's overstepping her boundaries or not. I really can't tell if she's more worried about my mood or about bothering me. Normally I'd just shrug it off and assure her that I'm fine, but my reflective mood gets the better of me. Despite being staff, she really doesn't feel as much like an authority figure as the others. It's just... I guess the best term for it would be relationship problems. Stop hitting right-click, idiot. Oh, I'm not too good with that kind of thing. My only relationship ended a bit abruptly. But if you want to talk about it, I could listen, I think. Now I feel kind of bad for bringing it up. She's not that old, though, so at least she has a good chance of finding another partner. It isn't like we're in a bad situation right now. We have spent many days together as friends, sometimes going out to do stuff, that kind of thing. But I'm starting to want to do more for her. I'll learn more about her and be with her more. I'm not sure whether it's actually love or not, though, and our friendship as it stands is enjoyable. The game feels super loud. Did my audio... You shouldn't let that stop you. Sorry. How to say this, I think that it's nice you have a good friendship, but school's going to eventually end. Do you think you'll be fine with not knowing if it could have gone further after you've graduated? I guess that's the crux of the problem. I really have no idea what the answer to that question is. Well, I can't really help there. What your true feelings are is something you have to decide for yourself. But I think that if you do love her, you should definitely say something. After thinking about it really hard, I decided that even though my relationship didn't work out, it's still better that way than never knowing if it might have or not. I'd never expected Yuko to sound so wise. It only makes sense that, with more life experience than I, she'd have a better idea about this. Well, I suppose not very much was actually answered. Talking to her has helped get it off my chest, and I have no doubt that I should confess if I really do like Lilly. I gave a slightly frustrated sigh. If only reading so much actually helped when it comes to situations like this. She gives a girlish giggle, which only reinforces my view of her being as different from the usual staff here. In the end, it all comes down to what will happen after school finishes once again. Considering what happened before I came to Yamagu, it feels like being asked to keep up with a field of runners despite having started from a dozen yards behind them. It's just one more motive to move on from the past. The last thing I need right now is to get too caught up in that and getting homesick while I'm at it. Once again, I find myself calling Lilly. My phone bill is going to be horrific, considering this is international. But it's worth it. I don't only want to smooth over her feelings from last time I called, I genuinely want to talk to her again. When the phone finally picks up, I easily recognize the voice on the other end. I'm not going to do it again, you know. Hello, Miss Satoi. May I, speak... Damn, I've forgotten how the rest is supposed to go. It's not encouraging to forget such a small amount of words, even if I didn't spend that long trying to memorize them. May I speak with Lilly, please? Hello again, Hiseo. Are you teaching yourself English? Just a little. I don't think I'm too good at languages in general. Oh, don't say that. Your pronunciation was good. I'll get Lilly for you. Just wait a moment. I obediently wait as she goes off in search of Lilly, the other end going silent. Eventually, a much more awake-sounding Lilly than last time answers, the time over there being past noon by now. Hiseo, are you there? Yeah, I'm here. Hi. Good afternoon. Sorry for taking so long. I was outside in the garden. Gardening? Unfortunately, I've found I'm no good at it, so I just smell the flowers. I think my fingers appreciate it more. I take it Hanako's recovered a bit? Yeah, I just made sure she was eating, and eventually she righted herself. Thanks for the help the other day. I don't think I was really that much help. The main thing is that she's better, though. True. How's life over there, then? It sounds like you've been living in nothing short of a mansion. I wouldn't call it a mansion. But it is rather large, is obviously what she wants to say, though modesty stops her. I'm a little envious, but it is her holiday. It's a nice house to stay in, though. There's a beach near here, too, which Akira is especially fond of. She's a swimmer? She's constantly dragging me there to have swimming competitions, which she wins, every time. Lily doesn't strike me as very athletic at all, so not being adept at swimming seems logical enough. The fastest I've ever seen her move is her understandably relaxed pace during her walks to and from the suburbs down the hill from the school. It makes the image of her swimming hard to imagine. The beaches there must look nice. They'd be less crowded than the ones around here, at least. Indeed. Akira says the air around here looks beautiful because it's so far outside the city. I only realize what I've said after I say it, but it doesn't bother her at all. It's still easy to forget that she can't see when she's not around, despite the time we've been friends. That said, the local accent sometimes makes communication a bit hard. It's a constant reminder that this isn't home. The fact that she doesn't consider her parents' residence to be her home makes good sense. It makes me realize that I can't really answer whether the same goes for me. Graduation from Yamaku is distant enough to be difficult to view objectively, and I've spent so much time in this small room, I've come to accept the dormitory as my new home surprisingly quickly. I guess that would be hard to deal with. Is your knowledge of English holding up? Thankfully. I may be fluent, but being in a position where I have to use it often helps in curbing my Japanese accent, so it's been useful practice. I hear you're trying to teach yourself English? More like memorizing a few lines and failing at even that much. I'm really not cut out for learning another language. My admission of defeat draws an amused giggle. I believe that there are things one chooses to do in life, and also things that are chosen for one to do in life. You can take comfort in the fact that you're better than me in science and math, at least. All that's helped is making me Mutoi's star student. I wouldn't worry about it. They're useful skills for many jobs, right? That's what he tells me. His face veritably lit up when I said I'd probably go into a career involving either. We both share a warm laugh at the events that have befallen each other on opposite ends of the world. It's nice, and reminds me of our simple small talk that I've been missing since she left. As each of us waits for the other to begin speaking, I decide to push ahead with my feelings. I can feel my throat tightening slightly. I miss you. The silence on the other end of the phone tells me she's given the words their due weight, but as it goes on, I can't help feeling more and more apprehensive. Thankfully, the silence ends, almost as quickly as it had begun. I miss you too, Hiseo. Goodbye. Goodbye, Lily. Once again, the phone is hung up, simply and without any further ado. That light, tentative, almost shy voice, her warm and soft tone. I'd simply be lying to myself if I were to say that I don't recognize this feeling for what it is. With thoughts of Lily dancing on my mind, I start anticipating her return. Today has been a most excellent day.
It's getting spicier. Save.
I sit listening to another of Mutoi's long-winded lectures, my mind wandering far from the scribbles on the dirty blackboard. Since I called Lily, my mind's been drawn in two directions. Both, roughly, lead to the same conclusion. I've started to feel oddly detached from my past life. It's only been a month and a half since I arrived here, yet this school's become a second home. I've gained new friends and contacts, managed to get to grips with the school's lifestyle and culture, and become accustomed to the quirks of my classmates. To become used to a school where disabilities are the norm, rather than the rare exception, still catches me off guard sometimes when I think on it. The same school that's populated by burn victims, amputees, the blind, the deaf, and all manner of disabilities in between. If someone had described the school to me before I'd come, I'd have shrugged it off as an overactive imagination. Even when I first arrived, I felt like the Dutch, coming to this strange new land for the first time. It's amazing how quickly one becomes used to the environment they're forced to live in, really. Now I've even found someone that's got me entirely smitten. What a strange life. Before my mind can wander any further, though, I find a page of lined paper slipped under my distracted face. The garish, bright pink ink has no doubt been penned by Misha. Don't look so bored, Hee-chan. School's nearly over. 3-day holiday. Oh, right. We get Saturday and Monday off. Can't complain about having less school, I suppose. I uncap my pen and scribble on the page before covertly passing it back to her, flicking my eyes to the front of the class every now and then. Toy continues, scrawling away arcane equations on formulas on the board. Guessing you have something planned? Misha takes the paper back and hunches over it comically, even for her, with her tongue poking through the side of her mouth. Did she misinterpret my expression as depressed and is trying to cheer me up? Student council work with Shi-chan, of course. You're not still brooding over that, surely. But Hee-chan could have helped us, poor, lonely girls. I'd lend you a hand for today if I weren't going to be busy. Ooh, naughty naughty, Hee-chan. I'm just going to meet Lilly with Hanako. I don't know what you've got going through your head. So Lily's back? Yeah, she's coming on the evening flight with her sister, so she'll be back in school next week. As she takes the note back and begins to write, I look up to see an unwelcome sight. While I frantically try to silently catch Misha's attention, Mutoi confidently strides through the gap between the desks from the front of the class, his intent gaze focused directly on her. She suddenly stops writing as his tall figure casts an impossibly long shadow over the page. Stop hitting right click. He silently takes the piece of paper from her and begins to read. Sweating bullets, I quickly glance around the class, noting their complete silence. Of course, it would just have to be the one thing that actually gets their attention during the lesson. After a scant few seconds examining the page, he rolls the paper up into a small tube and lightly bops Misha over the head with it. Half an hour until you can hop off to the student council. I think you can hold on until then. Misha's face cracks as the entire class erupts into laughter. He might well be awkward, but he knows how to handle her excellently. I'd probably feel sorry for her if I weren't as busy stifling my own laughter. Hiseo, is that one it? No, I think that's some foreign airline. And so, the third aircraft they're not on comes into land. For the past half... What the hell happened there? For the past half hour, we've been whiling away the time with small snippets of pointless chatter. Lilly and Akira's flight has been delayed, and at this rate, it'll probably be dark before their plane arrives. Is that one it? No, the company colors are wrong. Hanako's eyes flutter left and right, following the trickle of people in and out of the huge glass doors ahead of us. Fortunately, nobody pays her much heed, their attention apparently directed towards greater things. Maybe that one is it. No, I think that's... Hold on a minute, I think that one might be it after all. It takes still some more time before the billboard changes their flight status to disembarking. A loud yawn sneaks up on me, not allowing enough time to stifle it. My sleep patterns have, once again, been all over the place. Likely due to a mix of worrying about Hanako and the side effects of my medications. Hiseo, over there. I look to Hanako, then follow her gaze to the airport door. Oh, Lilly, they're here! Really? We all call out to each other in greeting, quickly shuffling over to the side to avoid blocking the passage of others. Lilly! Hanako jumps forward to hug Lilly, a wide smile on her face being all that's needed to see her happiness at Lily's return. Lilly simply smiles in return, her voice soft. It's wonderful to meet you again, Hanako. As the two give each other a hug, well deserved after all that's happened while she was gone, I turn to Akira. Yo. You're pretty late. Yeah, there was a pretty bad storm over the airport. We got drenched just going from the car to the door. I guess you'll appreciate the weather here more then. Welcome back to you too, Lily. Hanako breaks off from Lily as I speak. For a long time, neither of us says a word. Contrary to what I had thought her homecoming would be like, the atmosphere feels awkward, almost stifling. Both of us try to guess each other's feelings, not quite sure about what should be said. Damn. This is exactly what I'd feared when I thought of trying to move things forward between us. Lily runs her hand through her fair hair and awkwardly twirls one of her bangs in her fingers, clearly trying to think of how best to react. Eventually, thankfully, Lily gives a small sigh and breaks the silence. Thank you, Hiseo. It's nice to be back. Are you okay? You look tired. Evidently not recollecting herself all that well, she quickly waves her hand in front of her face to stave off any concern Hanako may have over her. I'm okay, really. It's just a bit of jet lag. Weak. You don't have any? She simply gives a big grin, puffing out her modest chest. I feel absolutely fine. That's not fair. Ah, well. You shouldn't take too long to get rid of it. Ah, that's right. Hiseo? Yeah? Don't we have a holiday from school soon? I'd have forgotten if Misha hadn't reminded me this morning. We've got a 3-day weekend starting from tomorrow. Akira playfully bumps her elbow lightly into Lily's side, grinning. Told you wouldn't miss it. You have something planned? If neither you nor Hanako are busy. I've got no plans, so something to do would be appreciated. Hanako? No, nothing. That's good. I was thinking we could go to my family's summer house for a bit of quiet over the break. We've rarely used it recently, though, so we'd have to dust things off a little while we're there. Oh? Where is it? Up north in Hokkaido. The place is practically deserted, so it should be a nice quiet break for you guys. You're not coming? Nah, got a little holiday of my own set up with my boyfriend. I lower my eyes at her, suspicious of her intentions. Sounds like we're just cleaning up the summer house for you. That's perhaps a valid conclusion. Both of us zero in on Akira, her face somewhat evasive. Looks like we were right. That's just a convenient bonus. Really. Me and the guy left in pretty good condition while we were there, I promise. Now then, I'm out of here. Already? Akira. She quickly turns and walks away, her hand held high. See you in a few days, guys. Lily and I can only sigh at her hasty retreat. It does sound like it would be a nice place to go. Lily gives an enthusiastic nod, taking her carry bag in one hand and placing her other on Hanako's shoulder for guidance as we begin to make our way to the taxi area. After the fracas of the past few days, spending a weekend in the country alone with her and Hanako sounds like a dream. The more I think about it, the more sure I am. This will be the right time and place to confess my feelings to her. I'm glad we're not going to see Akira. I'm a little glad we won't see Akira a bit after this route because I'm so bad at doing a voice for her. A little bit concerned I'll have to use my sensor again because in the next coming hour or two. The morning chill wraps itself around my shivering body. I huff into my cupped hands to desperately try and stave off the cold as we mill about on the station platform. Lily's clothing looks rather ill-suited for the temperature around us. I can only hope it's indicative of what she expects the weather to be like at our destination. Damn it, Lily, why do we have to get here so early? Unfortunately, the train schedule is against us. The next train to Hokkaido is at 2 in the afternoon. Great. Just great. I pause a moment to wipe some sleep out of my eyes, and Lily promptly takes advantage of the opening. Cheer up, Hiseo. Once we get there, it'll be much warmer. Why not just take the bullet train? A normal train's going to take hours to get us there, so we may as well take the Shinkansen line as far north as it goes and just switch at the end. There's a certain charm to older trains, wouldn't you agree? I'd agree if I weren't freezing in the morning cold because we decided to take one. I'm sorry, Hiseo. Sorry? What for? I was the one who suggested taking a normal train. Way to make me feel guilty. All I can do is sigh and cover my face with my hand. It's fine, I'm just grumbling. My, Hanako. You needn't shoulder all the blame yourself. Even without your suggestion, I'd still have opted for the same thing. Thankful for the quick interception from Lilly, I take a quick gander around the station. Aside from us, the train platform's all but deserted, the morning dew settling on the empty benches. I guess no one else was masochistic enough to brave the very early morning. Though if someone was, they'd more than notice the huge bags both Lilly and Hanako brought with them. Just what did you have to pack into those things anyway? The bags? She pauses a moment and tilts her head in thought. A change of clothing, raincoat, underwear, sleepwear, a number of books. I think that's most of it. You make it sound as if I'm unprepared. You brought less? Underwear and a pack of cards. That's it. And my pills, but never mind that. No pajamas? Damn, I knew I forgot something. As I ruffle my hair in frustration, Lilly sighs. There should be clothes you can use. Akira still occasionally goes there after all, and I think some of our parents' clothing is still in storage. I don't think there'll be any problem with you borrowing a set of pajamas if need be. Thanks. Still, I don't mind just sleeping in my normal clothing. For 2 days? Good point. Not really. Though 2 days would be borderline, it's more that looking even a little like a slob would be unacceptable in the presence of two girls. As we leisurely talk on the station platform, an announcement sounds from the loudspeakers, loudly heralding our ride's arrival. Looking past Lilly and Hanako, though, the train's still well out of sight. A quick check of my watch is enough to see that it's the one we'll be taking. The 5:30 train was ours, right? Correct. Either of you want me to take your bags? Mine's not exactly heavy. My, that's very gentlemanly of you, Hiseo. Don't accept too reluctantly, no? As I bend down to pick up Lily's large bag, I look to see Hanako picking up hers. You fine with that? A silent nod's the only answer. I'm starting to get the feeling that by the trip's end, I'll be able to count every sentence she said on one hand. Oh, that's right, this CG. This is a lovely CG we're going to get here. With the morning landscapes passing by the window, and the occasional rattle of the train bumping the carriage around, I try to focus my attention on the aging playing cards held in my hand. I'll raise you 5. She scrunches her face up and leans over to Lilly conspiratorially, the two exchanging a few whispered words. Considering how often this has happened so far, I'm coming to doubt Hanako's grasp on how to play poker. Okay, I have to turn this SFX down because otherwise I'm going to go deaf. Doesn't seem to disturb Lily's reading, though, her hands flitting over each page with only occasional corrections to account for the train's bumping and rocking. My collection of chess pieces that we're using as chips is steadily growing anyway, so it doesn't really bother me. Looking around us, our carriage is almost as empty as the station platform we'd waited for the train itself on. Only a handful of people can be seen, looking mostly like tourists and couples on holiday. While the two continue their less than clandestine strategizing, a small boy looks over the seat and stares at me. Hoping he doesn't begin to stare at Hanako, I simply give him a wave and a smile. Thankfully, he retreats back to his seat after finding me far too boring to waste his attention on. I'll see you and raise another 5. Damn, you got me. I fold. I've been bluffing, and she caught me. Hanging my head, I push over a large portion of my winnings. Hanako looks absolutely delighted, and even if Lilly keeps her attention focused on her reading material, I can see the smirk on her face. They're both extremely pleased. For a moment, I try to work out what Lily's reading, but the cover is too faded to read beyond the fact that Roman letters are on it. A pity I can't read the braille above the printed title. What are you reading, Lilly? The title looks like it's in English. That's right. It's And Then There Were None, an old British story. I could read it to you if you'd like. She extends the offer with a grin, obviously in jest. I think I'll pass, thanks. Alright. After a seemingly endless trip, we finally reached the promised land of the Satoi summer house. Even after the train trip, the walk-up seemed to take forever. Despite my grumblings, though, I'd have never guessed the sight that would be in store for us once we traveled that long, deserted road. It looks more like a farmhouse than the everyday house I'd imagined, small in size and surrounded by trees and bushes. An empty expanse of wheat fields and farming land can be seen as we walk up, the fencing only consisting of rickety old wooden planks. It really drives home how far we are from the major cities, and is a sight that feels antithetical to the environment I grew up in. The only thing that doesn't surprise me is its western styling. Wow, it's amazing out here. It's wonderful. That's nice to hear. Well, Akira may have said that she's kept the house in reasonable condition. I was worried that we might have different standards of reasonable. Looks like there isn't another soul for miles. I thought Akira would be the type to keep to the city. God damn, the music is so loud. Lilly furrows her brow in thought, seemingly recalling almost forgotten knowledge. For memory, there's a small town not too far ahead. Other than that, though, this is largely just old farmland. Akira and I stayed in our parents' house, which was in the nearest city for a while, but after they left, we decided to move into a smaller, more easily maintainable house. To find a place like this in Japan nowadays, it's kinda anachronistic. Well, this town does have quite a bit of history. Look down the street one last time before getting back to the task at hand. Shall we go in then? I'm parched. It was a long walk to get here. Lilly gives an enthusiastic nod, the three of us lugging our bags into the house. As soon as we set foot inside, Hanako and I start looking around, taking in every detail of where we'll be staying for the next few days. All the artifacts of another's life stopped mid-motion around the house, such as the television guide lying beside the counter it was on, and pans in the adjoining kitchen still sitting on the stove. It's a strange feeling, really, as if we were stepping into Akira's life for a brief moment, before leaving in a couple of days, just as we'd come. Of course, the more mundane reality is that she just hasn't cleaned up after herself that well. Where should we put our bags? I'll show Hanako our bedroom. You can put yours here if you'd like. You mean I don't have the same bedroom as you two? Hanako flowers into a full blush as Lilly takes her cheek in her hand. Oh my, how bold. You two. Hold on, if I'm to leave my bags here, where will I be sleeping? Well, seeing as we lack a guest bedroom. The convertible futon, huh? Sorry, Hiseo. I sigh, lamenting my place on the bottom rung of sleeping location priorities. I guess there's no other choice. Lilly leaves to show Hanako to their bedroom, so I take a small tour of my surroundings after I drop my bag on the floor. The kitchen, just like the living room, is fairly modest. The rustic nature of the wooden furnishing drives home just how far we are from civilization. Returning to the living room, I decide to try out the television until they get back. With a touch of the remote, it immediately flickers to life, apparently set on it to a news channel. Almost flopping down from exhaustion rather than sitting, I lay back and watch. And watch. And watch. Sleep. Hiseo. I quickly blink to wake myself up, Lilly and Hanako having returned, minus their bags. From the Hokkaido night sky visible outside the windows, it looks like I drifted off to sleep. Looking to the wall-mounted clock, it's already 10. You found the television, then? Yeah, it really does feel nice and homey here. I'm glad you like it. You were already out like a light when we came back after unpacking things, so we didn't have the heart to wake you sooner. Judging from her giggle, I must sound funny when I sleep. I swiftly decide not to inquire. There's some dinner waiting for you in the kitchen. Hanako gives a deep yawn, only just remembered to cover her mouth at the last second. My, are you tired? I didn't get much sleep last night. I'm pretty tired, too. It was a long walk up here, and it's getting late. If that's the case, I suppose we should retire for the night. Good night, Hiseo. Good night. Night. With that, they quietly turn and walk back to their bedroom. Opening my eyes, I sigh. Wonder if I'll be able to get to sleep after being woken up. Suppose I'll eat something and watch some more TV quietly before going to bed. That makes me a little nostalgic. I have family that lives out about as north as you can get in the United States. And several of my family members and family friends have cabins out on the lakes up there. It reminds me a whole lot of that. And there's one thing I'd ever think about. It's that would be a nice way to live. That would be enjoyable. I think I'd like that. Sometime, I think. It'd be quite the departure from living in one of the biggest cities in the United States right now, so I think having that kind of small, isolated house would be quite enjoyable. But I'm just rambling. Let's get back to reading. Is he still sleeping? I think so. I'm not. I am, however, incredibly tired. It's getting late in the morning. I know that. He likely stayed up to watch television. I could hear it from our bedroom. Only because I couldn't get to sleep. Should we wake him? Don't do that, Hanako, please. No, we should leave him. I doubt he'd want to be woken early if he didn't get much sleep during the night. Thank you, Lily. Besides, he sounds so peaceful. It would be a shame to wake him when he's like this. Keep a straight face, Hiseo. It is nice she cares so much, though. Hanako, could you go to the fridge and fish out what's needed to make lunch? All right, just the vegetables and rice? That should be enough. We only need something simple, as we can eat in town later. Hanako's footsteps on the carpeted floor can be heard, moving away from the living room. As they do, I feel Lily's hand gently rest on my chest. It takes a titanic effort not to react, but something about her makes me think she knows I'm awake. A long silence passes. The only thought in my mind is of that gentle, outstretched hand laying upon my chest. After an indiscernible amount of time, Lily withdraws her hand. Good morning, Hiseo. Conceding defeat all too easily, I prop myself up and rub my eyes. How'd you know? Your breathing was off. Well, that makes sense. She couldn't have needed that long to work it out. Knowing her hearing, she likely knew before laying her hand on me. If you want to sleep more, you should really go to bed earlier. I heard the television going long into the night. Sorry about that. My medications have been interfering with my sleep for a while now. Even if I'm tired, I have trouble actually sleeping. I'm sorry for bringing it up, Hiseo. I sigh. This is exactly the kind of thing I wish others wouldn't do. Save. If you hadn't guessed, the answer here is we're going to address this. Come on, you worry about me more than I do at times. It just means I have to sleep a bit longer, that's all. But still, I'd say that I look absolutely fine, but I guess that wouldn't have a lot of meaning for you. She gives a sigh of consternation before trailing off with a amused chuckle, giving up the point. If you say so, please do take care of yourself, Hiseo. Go on, Hanako could use some help. She moves to protest, but reluctantly acquiesces and disappears into the kitchen, her hand running along the smooth white walls as she slowly walks. For a while I sit and watch television in an attempt to wake myself a little more, but it's futile. I don't have anything better to do, so I follow Lily's lead. As I round the corner, I see Hanako and Lily, backs turned, quietly cutting food on the granite-colored counter. I am temporarily engrossed as I watch Lily guiding the knife down carefully with a finger on the cabbage she's cutting, each slice delivered slowly but with precision. She seems a little slow, but considering that she can't see what she's doing, it's a small wonder she can cook at all. let alone for both her and Hanako. Hi, Hanako. Lilly, want any help? Is that Hiseo? Oh, morning, Hiseo. Oh, she cut her finger. Lilly jerks back in surprise before turning around, her yelp immediately drawing Hanako and me to her side. What's... A small trickle of scarlet falls downward from her pale fingertip, the knife having cut just deep enough to draw blood. With the television sound masking my footsteps, she must not have noticed me coming. To compensate for having to use touch to guide everything she does during cooking, she must need to pay extra attention. Lilly. Don't worry, Hanako. It's just a small wound. You should still get a band-aid on at least until it stops bleeding. First aid stuff would be in the bathroom, right? I think so. Will you be okay here, Hanako? I frown at how little heed she's paying to herself as Hanako gives a quick, almost automatic nod. Stop hitting right-click. It's fine. I can keep making lunch. An awkward silence reigns as I set the bottle of antiseptic and a box of band-aids on the side of the sink, Lily's finger held out for me to treat. The lid of the bottle comes off with a minimum of resistance, and the small ball of cotton I soak in the liquid stains a pale green. Okay, hold still. This'll probably hurt a bit. She gives a small nod as I take hold of her hand to steady it. With all the tenderness I can muster, I gently bring the dampened wad to the small red line. Ah. What? I barely touched it. Sorry. I give a sigh, both at her reaction and to settle my own nerves. Her pain tolerance is startlingly low. I would tell you to man up, but I can't really do that. She gives a small giggle. I take advantage of her momentary distraction and gently press the cotton against her finger a few times. Thankfully, it's enough to do the job. We both settle somewhat as I bring the band-aid over the tip of her finger, covering the wound while making sure not to get it stuck to her fingernail. There, finished. You can move now. Taking her hand from mine, she gently clasps it in the other. Thank you. It's no problem. It's the least I can do after causing you to hurt yourself, after all. She lowers her head slightly at the apology, absent-mindedly rubbing her hand in what seems to be embarrassment. I really don't mind. Her answer doesn't seem to make much sense, given that what happened is pretty clearly my fault. I can't help grimacing at her, despite the fact that her dainty smile still holds. She must not like being reminded of the limitations her lack of sight imposes on her. It's something I can't possibly fault her for. I've fallen prey to the same kind of feelings before, despite my condition not being nearly as ubiquitous in my life. Neither of us any the happier. We head back to the various smells of cooking food coming from the kitchen. I lay out the plates of food, steam slowly rising from the well-cooked rice and curry dishes, while Hanako lays out the cutlery. Knife one side, fork on the other. Western. How perfectly fitting for someone like Lilly. As we take our seats, taking careful heed of the dark red tablecloth hanging below our knees, Lilly emerges from the kitchen. In her hands are 3 glasses and a bottle of wine? As I recall our previous run-in with that devilish elixir, I hide my face in my palm. Alcohol? Seriously? She pauses as she reaches the table, a playful grin perched on her face. Akira specifically gave permission to take a bottle from her collection. Not only does she give alcohol to minors, she even lets them pilfer their own? The perfect model of a responsible adult, Akira is not. More to the point, though, that this is hardly a meal deserving of alcohol. I'm starting to think Lily's the type to easily become hooked on things. That's not really the problem. I don't really have any qualms with it, but didn't you have a bad experience with it last time? Last time was likely due to drinking too much, so a single glass shouldn't prove a problem. Think of it as a learning experience. I can't recall many learning experiences that made me feel rotten before putting me to sleep, but I'll take your word for it. She dips an uninjured finger to feel the liquid level, tip against the bottom as the liquid rises up. The white of her finger almost seems to glow as the sunlight hits it, the delicate outline blurred and refracted by the glass. Her fingers are definitely longer than mine. Kind I'd think more suited to a pianist than a teacher. She'd likely have done well if she learned how to play. We quickly dig into our meal, forks and knives clattering against plates. None of us are particularly eager to speak while eating. Lily altogether too reserved for such a thing. Hanako probably too shy to start a conversation, and I too busy savoring the food. Such a pedestrian activity, eating together at a table. It seems so utterly normal, yet it makes me realize how long it's been since I've done something like this. Just the three of us, sitting around a single table, eating as if we were a malformed family. Maybe this trip, as far away from everything as we are, was worth it. It takes quite a long time, but eventually we all finish our surprisingly filling meal. The wine, thankfully, has little effect given we've only had a glass or two each. I slump back into the seat, rubbing my stomach contentedly. I'm stuffed. Lily pats her mouth with a napkin. Twice, only twice, and with evenly timed intervals in between. It's hard to tell sometimes whether how she acts is a well-trained routine or a well-rehearsed act. I think it must be as well. Did you like it, Hanako? It was nice. Now that we're well fed, shall we be off? Off? Where? You weren't privy to the discussion between Hanako and me earlier. I get the impression that she's having a subtle dig at my sleeping in. We'll be going into the town nearby. I guess I should have expected two girls to take a holiday as an excuse to go shopping, no matter where on the planet they may be. I am interested to see more around the north, though, so this can only be a good thing. Sounds good. How long's the walk in, then? It's supposed to be about around a mile to a mile and a half. Nearby, huh? Great. Just great. As we climb the path surrounded by trees and undergrowth, I watch Lily and Hanako walking ahead. A slight breeze all but whisked away the sound of Lily's cane gently tapping on the ground. I notice that Lily's since removed the band-aid now that the bleeding of her finger has stopped. A deep, lung-filling breath of the fresh country air makes me wish all the harder that the area around home had been quite so clean. It can't have even been half a mile, but I'm already working up a sweat. It isn't a pleasantly cool day, though, so I shouldn't be too hard on myself for it. Stop doing that. Hey, Lily. How well do you know this town, anyway? So I've spent quite a few of my vacations here up until I entered Yamaku. I'd say I know it fairly well. We used to drive there once a weekend, then. How I wish Akira was here to drive us now. I quietly take a moment to rub my hands a couple of times, staving off the oddly cold feeling in them. Did you like it up here? I'd say it was nice during winter, but as you can work out, summers get a little too hot for comfort. It's nice and quiet, at least. My family's real house is quite far south. When they left Japan, my parents gave it to Akira and me. Only Akira lives there now, after my moving into Yamaku. Well, quiet certainly describes this place. Though lonely is how I'd put it. Other than the prophesized small town, there isn't another soul for miles around. Coming from a home nestled deep within the big city, it's certainly different. I think that if I'd not come to Yamaku, staying out in the country like this would be too much of a change to get used to. After getting accustomed to the school's isolation, though, the idea of living in a place such as this has become almost inviting. To be somewhere away from the hustle and bustle of the metropolitan centers. So, Hiseo, have you been to Hokkaido before? Nah, I used to live down south, and we never had any field trips or holidays up this far. Well, it's a new experience for you, then. Yeah, it is. I'm surprised at how nice it feels here. How about you, Hanako? She shakes her head from side to side. It's my first time, too. As we continue walking, I begin to feel pins and needles in my legs. It's a little disturbing given there's no reason for it to be happening. Could you two hold on a moment? I just need to... Is anything wrong? I've just got pins and needles and... My vocal cords suddenly become taut as my chest tightens instantaneously. I quickly pull my upper arm over it, trying to quell the shout of pain spreading throughout my entire body. Hiseo? Lily's face is only mildly concerned, not knowing the sight which Hanako's recoiling from. I'm fine, just tired. I remove my arm from my chest and force myself to begin walking again. It's just a minor heart flutter, so it'll pass like the others. It only takes a couple of steps before my body violently revolts against me, my legs suddenly beginning to give way underneath me, and all tension in my knees seeming to evaporate. Before I can react, they uselessly give way under my weight, leaving me only just enough time to brace myself and fall onto all fours. Ah, damn. As I look up to her, I realize my face is still taut with pain, only adding that much more to her worrying. Hiseo? Hanako, tell me what's going on. Hanako, tell me. Hanako quickly moves to my side as Lilly almost panics, having little clue as to exactly how bad a condition I'm in. While she stands there petrified, I lower my face and take a deep breath. I come to a realization that makes me endlessly irritated with my stupid self. With all the excitement of my new surroundings, I'd entirely neglected to take my medications last night or even this morning. Taking another breath, the acute pain in my chest begins to die down as suddenly as it arrived. Thank God, thank God, thank God, thank God, thank God. As it does, I become acutely aware of the sweat by now pouring off my face and the two scared girls around me. Hiseo. I'm fine, Lilly. I'm fine. I screw up my brow in an effort to lever myself up. Hanako's arms quickly moving to catch me if I fall, as I stumble a bit before regaining my balance. I look to Lilly and Hanako, worry written on both their faces. I feel awful. Utterly awful. I think we should go back. Realizing the futility of protesting, I look away in frustration. Fine.
Never forget to take your pills, kids.
I open my eyes groggily, completely bereft of energy. For a while, I simply lie down lifelessly, staring at the ceiling as I review the events of the morning in an attempt to organize my thoughts. We went to walk to town. My heart nearly gave way. We came back. I took my pills. I slept. I can only remember each period of time as a snapshot, but the timeline is clear enough. The memory of the girls' faces as I struggle to stand is an unpleasant one, stinging my feelings harshly. Meant to save. If I look at the ceiling hard enough, I can imagine the tile edges and small dimples of the ceiling in the hospital. That fact alone is enough to make me sit up and try to pull myself together. I scratch the back of my disheveled hair, glancing around the room. Lilly and Hanako are nowhere to be seen, and the television's turned off. The clock above it says it's pretty late in the afternoon. The noticeably reddened sky outside the window confirms it further. I turn and pick myself off the futon, swaying slightly as I put my arms out for balance. Suppose I'd better go look for the girls to see if they're alright. As I look out the window, I faintly see something in the distance. Straining my eyes, I can just make out the shape of a person's figure. Her long blonde hair, swaying in the faint breeze, makes her almost seem to melt into the bright yellow of the wheat field. Without a second thought, I leave the room to follow that lone apparition. Oh, this is a beautiful CG too. The brightness of the setting sun assaults my freshly woken eyes, forcing me to avert them until they adjust. The long yellow strands of wheat brush against my legs as I wade through them, the densely grown field making it hard to advance. Regardless, my eyes stay fixed ahead, true to that solitary figure. Within minutes I reach her, meters behind her, turned back. Lilly? She simply nods. Where's Hanako? She's in bed. She went to sleep after I calmed her down. She says it matter-of-factly, and with as few words as possible, as if saying any more was strictly forbidden. There's something different about her. Her normally confident figure seems oddly fragile, her body offering no resistance to the breeze blowing her skirt. The strands of wheat sway from side to side while a deafening pause passes, the only sound being their rustling. As we stand in the field alone, I know what I have to ask. What's wrong, Lilly? You're not acting like you usually do. Remember when I talked of my family, Hiseo? Your family. I look downwards in thought, sifting through my scattered memories. The event seems to leap ready to hand when I search for it, rising to the surface as soon as it was recalled. After Hanako's birthday party, she gives a single, simple nod. It was nice back then. You and I, celebrating with Hanako, simply sharing presents, talking, having fun together. It was almost as if we were a family, one small, misshapen family. I thought that could just go on forever, just the three of us, happily together. She takes a long breath, a slight shakiness to it, just barely audible through the moving air. Even if my family was so far away, as long as we were together, that was all I needed. I don't want to lose you, Hiseo. I didn't even realize how afraid I was of losing someone else until today. I'm sorry, Lily. I know my body's weak, but even then I make the most stupid of mistakes. Don't apologize. Please don't apologize. Lily? She turns to face me, her pale cheeks stained with tears. One misguided step after another, she stumbles toward me, her arms held out in search of so much as a faint brush against me. I love this CG. My heart doesn't race nor pound as I step towards Lily, gently taking and steadying her in my arms, as she quickly clutches to me, sobbing. With her face trembling against my shoulder, the next words from her mouth are the last I expected. I love you, Hiseo. I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. Don't go away, I beg of you. Never ever go away. I love you, so please. So that's why she's been acting like this. That tender voice when I called her, her thoughtless concern at the slightest pain I might feel. After having been left in Japan without her family, and with only Akira and Hanako and me around, she was afraid of losing yet another person who was close to her. She was genuinely worried for me. It's a strange feeling, a mix of surprise and sorrow, yet also of the deepest gratitude I think I've ever felt. The only reaction I can muster among my conflicting emotions is a calm sigh. You idiot. Hiseo? For a fleeting moment I feel her body become still. The only movement to be felt is the calm afternoon breeze. I said it before, didn't I? It's only natural to feel concerned about those around you. I'm still here, and I'll always be here, because I want to see you more each day, to share in your happiness, to support you in your sadness. But most of all, I'll still be here, because I want to see your smile, your true smile. A single gust of wind rustles the long strands of wheat, a second's silence passing. Smile when you want to smile. Cry when you want to cry. I love you, Lily, so you don't have to hold back anymore. With that, her arms clutch my back, as tightly as she can, her face buried beside mine. I want to look at this CG for a second. It's so nice. The art in this game is so good. It's really, really good. Her tears fall down my back, and she cries unrestrainedly as the last of her resistance melts away. Hiseo, Hiseo, Hiseo. I close my eyes and bring my head down to her shoulder, holding her shaking frame tightly. It's okay, Lily. I'll never go away. I promise. We slowly walk back to the house, holding each other tightly as we take a seat inside. Lily leans her head onto my shoulder as I put my arm around her waist. Neither of us has any want to break the silence. With her eyes shut, it's hard to work out whether she's fallen asleep. Not that I mind, the warmth of her body leaning against me, the softness of her hand delicately held in mine. For a long, long time, we sit, leaning against one another, sharing our warmth and feelings as night eventually begins to settle in. Lily's gentle, soft voice ends the silence. Thank you, Hiseo. Thank you? For returning my feelings. Did you think I wouldn't? There was the possibility. I take a deep breath and thought. That much was only my fault. It's funny, actually. I was thinking of telling you about my own feelings sometime soon. I guess in that way you saved me the effort. She raises her head a little and gives a tiny amused giggle. I smile at how earnest it is, so girlish in its lightness. She collects herself soon afterward, her hair resting against my shoulder. Feeling a bit better? She gives a small nod. You are thoughtful, Hiseo. That's why I like you. I'm sorry I'm like this. As much as I didn't want to make you concerned for me, I couldn't do anything to prevent it. Don't apologize for it. Please don't. Lily? Have I ever apologized for my blindness, even once? You can't help the way you were born, Hiseo. There's no point in apologizing for who you are. She says this with surprising conviction. In the end, it was perhaps this mentality which spurred her to befriend me in such a short time, in addition to her motherly instincts. She did seem to become trusting very quickly, but I never questioned why. Now it seems obvious that she did so to help me as I went through one of the lowest points of my life. I moved to respond, but cut myself off as I feel her fingers run gently through my hair. I feel their soft and delicate touch moving downwards to trace the contours of my face, her palm finally settling on my cheek. You are a beautiful person, Hiseo. Please don't ever apologize for that. For a moment, I'm utterly speechless. I slowly bend my head down, placing a tender kiss on her light, voluminous hair. We're a couple of right old fools, aren't we? We are. After a long calm, she speaks again. Hiseo? Yes? I wouldn't mind if you... I feel her hand tensing under mine, trembling slightly. My mouth opens, but try as I might, I can't formulate a response to her proposition. Lily? Before I can say another word, she slips her hand from under mine and tenderly holds the side of my face once more. Please. I give a peaceful smile, holding her hand against my cheek as I nod a single time. Okay. What were you all thinking, you perverts? It was just a kiss. As I look into her eyes, she leans toward me. Her delicate lips touch mine as she guides herself with her hand. She breaks off not a second later, faintly smiling. I love you, Hiseo. We kiss again, this time with both of us meeting the other. Okay, no, never mind. I almost knocked my cup over. Alright, I think here I should create my save state just to make sure we get all the CGs. Okay. Well, the previous kiss was one of love. This is one of lust. Our tongues meeting and our breathing heavy. After precious seconds we part, both our faces well and truly flushed. Both of us bring our fingers to our lips in unison, recalling that fleeting feeling, rapidly becoming buried both by our urges and bashfulness. Lily is the first to shift uncomfortably, though. What is it? Should we get more comfortable? Okay. Now that she mentions it, this futon would be a bit too narrow to do much on. Considering the thoughts running through both our minds, it's no small wonder one of us has any measure of foresight left.
I'm gonna throw the sensor back on.
I take her hands and guide her sideways as I move, the brief and awkward dance ending with both of us tentatively sitting on the floor opposite each other. As I reach forward to pull her top off, she stops after she moves her hand to do the same. You're shaking. I pause for a moment and look at my hands. Sure enough, they're quivering slightly. Whether it's from nervousness or excitement, I'm not sure. I guess I am. So you're as nervous as I am, then. I withdraw my hands and sigh, steadying myself. We have plenty of time, so there's no need to rush this. Sorry, it's my first time, so I'm a bit... She giggles shakily, all but confirming what I've reasonably deduced by now. It's the same for me. I'm happy we could share this together. I match her smile twofold, leaning forward and taking her body in my arms as she reaches to hug me back. I love you, Lily. You already said that. I can't help grinning. Even in such a situation, she still has her wits about her. Breaking our embrace, we decide to take off our own clothing. Well, it's easier this way. I don't doubt it's just an attempt to distract ourselves from our nerves. With slightly stiff hands, I begin to slide the button out from my shirt. Once we remove the last of our clothes, which end up haphazardly piled behind us, my breath is taken by the sight in front of me.
Oh, no.
It was a shrimp! It was a shrimp! Throw this back on real quick.
Okay, we're fine.
It was a shrimp. After being woken by a sound, I open my eyes with a measure of reluctance. Turning my head to the left, I find the rain outside sweeps against the windows loudly. Spray after wind-blown spray lashes against the glass, as if trying to make its hardest to make up for the summer's previous heat. I sit up in the futon, holding the back of my neck to try and subdue the pain from my awkward sleeping position. By all accounts, I should be lamenting the turn in the weather, given that this is our last day here. The events of yesterday refuse to stop flooding my mind, though. The feeling of holding Lily's crying body in my arms, the rush of lust and hormones that flowed through us as we spent the night together. It seems almost futile to try and rationalize everything that happened. In an attempt to distract myself, I groan and lean over to retrieve my bag without standing. Pulling out one bottle after another, I take the daily regimen worth of pills from their containers and swallow them without further ado. It took a surprisingly short amount of time to get used to swallowing pills without water. That said, I suppose the same thing goes for getting used to living in a school for disabled students. Remembering Yamaku, I become all the more grateful for having the chance to get away, even if it's just for the shortest of times. I appreciate the chance to spend time alone with Lily and Hanako, away from the bustle of school life, even considering the latest complications. I never thought I'd say it, but the idea of living away from the city in a nice, tranquil area is an inviting one. It's a thought that barely a year ago would have seemed ludicrous. A flash of pink, no doubt Hanako's gown, peeks from around the corner. Realizing I must look like a sight since I've only just woken up, I slap the remaining pills into my mouth and run a hand through my hair. Good morning, Iseo. I reply to her, completely forgetting that I'm in the middle of swallowing a particularly large pill. Coughing and sputtering, I violently gag on it. Iseo. After sputtering loudly and tapping my chest a couple of times to force it down, I managed to recover. I'm fine. Sorry, forgot I was swallowing. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I hold my hand up, gesturing for Hanako to stop. I gagged. It's my fault. Morning, Hanako. She pauses a moment before bowing in reply. Staggering in behind Hanako is the familiar figure of Lily, also dressed in her pajamas. With her eyes full of sleep and her hair bedraggled, she's a sight to behold. Hi, Lily. Good morning, Iseo. For a while, a silence hangs in the air as neither of us knows what to do. Given what happened last night, we both have more than enough reason to be finding the situation awkward. Just how are we meant to react to meeting each other after something like that? The best course of action would probably be to talk to Lily alone, to set things in order. I'll start making breakfast. Lily evidently catches on to my train of thought. I'll help. Hanako, could you set the table? She nods, her head disappearing into a cupboard as she quickly goes about her assigned task. I rub a little more sleep out of my eyes as I wander over to the fridge and take out some milk, and Lilly grabs various brightly colored boxes from some of the lower cupboards to my side. While we make the rather bland-looking meal, I whisper something more quietly than usual. Knowing Lily's hearing, she won't have any trouble catching what I say. Are you okay, Lilly? After last night? She gives a delicate nod, her expression weak. Her tiredness surely plays a part. She seems genuinely unsure about what's happened between us, and how to move ahead. I can't say I blame her, considering my feelings are the same. I'm sorry, Hiseo. I wasn't thinking straight yesterday, and I never stopped to consider you or Hanako, and I even went as far as... She's winding herself up. With her hands and voice both tightening, I give her a gentle bump to try and lighten up the situation. You don't have to apologize. I said I liked you as well, after all. But As her composure begins to falter, it becomes obvious there's no alternative. Turning to Lilly, I gently embrace her tall frame. She offers no resistance at all, thankfully pulling back, just from the edge of her emotions. Oh. Hanako-sa. Despite our reassuring embrace lasting only a matter of seconds, I notice Hanako wordlessly watching. The plate in her hand hovers inches above the table, her action halted midway by the sight. The clatter of utensils against plates is the only sound to be heard as we silently eat. Whereas before only two of us may have been unsure of ourselves, the entire situation has changed. After weeks of blissful friendship, whiling away the days with shared meals and chatter with little meaning, the relationship of Lilly and me, no, that of all of us, has irreversibly changed. I can't take this. Lilly. He solemnly nods, gently laying her spoon under the plate in front of her. I'm sorry, I forgot. The joke is that Lilly and Hiseo are like Hanako's parents, but like in stuff like this, it gets... it stops becoming a joke. It just becomes reality. I'm sorry, I'll compose myself. I'll try and compose myself so I can read this. It's a nice change to how emotionally heavy Hanako's root was when it got to this point. Because this is just a mother and father. I don't know if I'm delirious right now, but... Composed. I'm composed and ready to read. She solemnly nods, gently laying her spoon under the plate in front of her. Neither of us knows exactly how we regard each other, let alone how Hanako would view us. This might seem abrupt, but I've confessed to Hiseo. For a moment, Hanako looks almost confused, precisely the reaction I thought she would have. She eventually nods, her spoon still in her mouth as she does. Did you accept? I did. I can't, it's their relationship dynamic. There's no getting around it. Father, mother, and daughter. It's... She gives a smile so large and so earnest, I find myself blushing. I think it's the brightest I've ever seen her expression look. Then I'm happy. I'm really, really happy. I'm sorry for not telling you anything about it before. Things have been... Hanako shakes her head from side to side emphatically, apparently forgetting in her rush that Lilly couldn't possibly notice. She begins fiddling with her fingers, looking a little more nervous than she did before. To be honest, I began to think you might like each other a while ago. At first I didn't really know what to think about it, but I decided in the end that if my friends are happy, then I'm happy. I was really glad to have another friend when we met Hiseo. So you finding love through him is even better, right? A feeling of relief at her acceptance of our relationship falls over me like a wave. The same happens to Lilly, judging by her expression. Thank you, Hanako. I really appreciate you being so understanding. Lily's voice still sounds slightly apologetic, or at least unsure. This doesn't escape Hanako, who appears lost in thought for a few moments before turning to me. Hiseo, do you mind if Lily and I go outside for a bit? No, feel free. Hanako? Hanako gets up from her seat, taking Lily's hand and almost dragging her from the table in her excitement. Considering Lily's typical slow and steady pace, Hanako's haste makes her footing awkward, and she almost loses her balance a couple of times. It's a pretty amusing sight, leaving me wordless as I watch them disappear out the door. It's only now that I realize the rain stopped, being replaced by a sky seemingly all the more vivid and bright to make up for the morning's drab gray expanse. For Hanako, this must be a pretty big revelation. Lily and I are really the only people she associates with, almost as if we were parents in her own stead. Even the game makes the joke. I suppose that might well be the best way to describe the relationship we share. A father, mother, and daughter, all playing around in our little make-believe family as if it could last forever. It might be a strange dynamic, and one that certainly can't last for long, but maybe just for this one small moment, it's okay. As I stand from the table and go to join Lily and Hanako in the fields outside, I nod to myself in affirmation. This one small moment of happiness, no matter how brief, will last with me, with all of us, forever. Submerged deep in the hot water, I let a drawn-out sigh escape my lips. The feeling of seemingly every muscle in my body relaxing is euphoric. I have no idea how long it's been since I had a genuine hot bath, but right now I can hardly be bothered trying to remember. Maybe I'm giving this simple fact that for once I get to have a real bath more credit than it's due. The chance to just calm down, allow myself to unwind, and have some time to myself is a welcome one. Hanako, Lily, and I wandered about outside, exploring the extent of the surprisingly large tract of land surrounding the house. Then we spent the majority of the afternoon resting, watching television, reading, and playing cards. It may not have been the most exciting finale to the trip, but such tranquil peacefulness is something to savor. Even after we return to the school tomorrow, I think I'll remember this little house in Hokkaido for a long time. It's a pity we only have a couple more hours to spend here before going to get the train back. All I can do is yawn contentedly while I watch the steam slowly rise from the clear water's placid surface, my eyes eventually locking onto the ceiling. Our exams are imminent. I've barely studied at all for them. On top of that, I don't even know what I'll do after graduation. Passing exams is all well and good, but to what end? Also now, of all times, I'm getting into a relationship. What in the hell am I doing? I guess I shouldn't think like that. What's done is done, and maybe this could be viewed as just another aspect of my new life that I'm working on. I enjoy being with Lily, and there's more to life than school and a career, after all. As I busily attempt to rationalize all that's happened, I hear a series of raps on the door. I pick myself up and sit upright, trying to figure out the source. 3, no more and no less, light and yet assertive in their tapping, and timed regularly enough to toot a metronome. I'd be extremely surprised if it wasn't Lily. May I come in? Yeah, it's Lily. I'm still in the bath. I'll be out in a sec. I know. The voice coming from the other side of the door freezes me. After a second's thought, I rest on the side of the bath and let my arms dangle over the side. Despite trying my best to play it off, I can't help letting my mind wander. Sure, come in. Okay. With that, she opens the door, slowly walking into the room and closing it behind her. She looks oddly calm, countering my racing heart. Hey, Lily. Do you mind if I take a bath with you? I don't mind. Go ahead.
Alright. Throwing this back up to be ultra cautious.
With a small nod, she begins to lift her sweater off her shoulders, baring her chest little by little. I could do that for you, if you'd like. Refused. Why? Her face shows she's still not overly comfortable with letting me attend to her. I can't say I blame her. She continues undressing, her shirt and skirt falling to the floor and leaving her in her white lace bra and panties. Eventually, she stands bare in the center of the room.
Melon! The melons are back.
What the hell?
That was weird.
I want to see. Did I actually... Okay, I did not miss anything. That's right, I remember now. Hanako's route is the odd one out, from what I believe, in that it only has one NSFW scene. You only get to see melons in Hanako's route. But in this one, you got shrimp and melons. What a treat. After a chaotic dash to the station and finding our seats in the otherwise deserted carriage, we promptly crashed. Looking at the time, close to midnight, it's a little surprised that few take this particular train. Hanako is fast asleep on Lily's shoulder, and I can only barely muster the energy to stay awake. The excitement we had a while ago probably didn't help. I'd probably be pretty depressed about going back to school if my brain was actually working. As it is, though, the sight of the nighttime scenery scrolling by is surprisingly beautiful. My loud yawn is nearly wholly drowned out by the clacking of the train tracks and the old carriages rattling. So tired. And whose fault is that, Hiseo? She really does toe the line between insulting and amusing sometimes, though I manage to wring out a weary smile. I look back out the window, my reflection just visible on the clear pane. Truth be told, she's perfectly correct. If it weren't for that little interlude a few hours ago, both of us would have a lot more energy. On top of that, we both had to take another bath, very nearly making us late for the train's departure. Yeah, it was mine. Still, getting into a bath with a guy is a dangerous thing to do. Evidently. Sorry, I guess I kinda took advantage of the situation back there. Well, I didn't exactly hate it. She trails off. I look back to her. My eyes narrow as I see her slightly reddened cheeks and small grin, her mind obviously elsewhere. Say it. I knew the possibility of it happening was there. I knew it. You're just as dirty-minded as I am. She quickly coughed into her free hand, making her disapproval crystal clear. That's a rather crude way of putting it. Oh, and you would suggest? I merely have a healthy adolescent sex drive. So in other words, dirty-minded. Almost seeming to sense the moment, Hanako mumbles quietly as she furrows her brow in Lily's lap. Don't wake the child! Don't wake the child! Oh. This is such a nice change of pace from how sad Hanako's route was at the end. But then it got good, okay. Lily's look of disapproval melts away as she gently smiles and strokes her hand on Hanako's long, dark hair. All I can do is watch and smile. If someone were to ask me when I fell in love with her, I wouldn't be able to answer. The best I'd be able to come up with is... It just happened at some point, but I didn't realize it. If someone were to ask me why I love her, though, then I could answer much more easily. You really love Hanako, don't you? She gives a deep nod, smiling warmly. It's a pity we have to return to school. She seems to relax so much while we were all away. Alright, I think, you know what? I think tonight we're going to finish this route. We're going to finish this route tonight. We are going to finish Lily's route tonight. Because here, we're going to talk about Hanako. I wouldn't worry. Hanako's been gaining confidence thanks to you, at least for as long as I've known you two. She gives a self-deprecating sigh. I think I merely provided her with company and support. Since she came to know you, she's opened up much more, even to me. I get the feeling she's understating her influence on Hanako, especially given that, before the two came to know each other, Hanako had no friends to speak of. The friends I'd had in my previous school fulfilled what I'd have expected of them, for the most part simply being there for idle chatter. But in Hanako and Lily, there really feels to be more to their relationship. Part of me envies it, but another can't ignore the fact that the school year will eventually end. After graduation, I really have no idea what Hanako will do. This trip has shown me just how much we've all come to depend on one another. Indeed, we're all going to have to make decisions. Maybe that's the reason why, despite a return to school and also heralding a return to the normalcy of everyday life, I can't help feeling a little restless. On the bright side, it won't take long for the summer holidays to arrive after our exams are finished. We could come back here during the summer holidays if you want. For a moment she thinks on the notion, her face becoming somewhat distant. I can only guess she's reflecting on all that's happened here. That would be good, I think. I nod approvingly, smiling at her. Summer, together with Lily. This idea seems like the perfect way to spend our holiday. Can we get through an entire act before it gets to be like 2 a.m.? This one I think is short, though. Act 4, Future. I think this one is a shorter one, because there's only one choice in this one. I'll go ahead and spoil that for you right now. There's only one choice. After the excitement of our trip to Hokkaido, it seems strange to be right back to the usual daily routine so soon. Indeed, it feels like a normal day, the same as any other. Well, that's what I'd like to think anyway. To tell the truth, the atmosphere of the entire the entire school has changed. An undercurrent of subdued trepidation had previously pervaded the class. Now that the exams are in sight, it's boiled over into frantic studying, rarely seen otherwise. One day until exams start. It's horrific, really. That instead of studying, we went and wasted our time up north. We were such model students, too. Glancing around the class, even the bubbly, ever-energetic Misha seems oddly deflated. She sits at her desk, nervously chewing a pen while Mutoi lectures from the front of the class. Wait, on closer inspection, I do believe she's eating it. Tearing my eyes away from the sorry spectacle, I turn my attention elsewhere. Hanako sits frantically scribbling in her notebook, her face mere inches away from the page, seemingly trying to record every word that leaves Mutoi's mouth. Shizune is Shizune. Cool as a cucumber, she sits diligently taking notes with her attention wholly focused on the front of the class. Truth be told, it's what I should be doing here as well, if not for the fact that I feel like I have a pretty good handle on what's being covered already. I wonder how Lily's doing. Well, she does have a good head on her. She has plenty on her plate, unlike me. Her class representative duties, taking care of Hanako, her other social contacts, her extra English studies. That girl really does take on a lot. The lunchtime bell brings a sigh of relief from the entire class, Mutoi being no exception. I get the feeling he much prefers the more laid-back atmosphere of his normal classes to the frantic pace of exam preparation we're subjected to right now. Hee-chan, help me. I lower my eyelids to half-mask, making clear my intention of doing quite the opposite. Help me, help me, help me. Not going well? Shi-chan's gonna be fine, but I think I might die. Am I gonna die, Hee-chan? Will you let me die from all this work? How maudlin. Given that she's neither the brightest student in the class nor the most diligent, it isn't a great surprise that she's finding it hard to cope with the workload. Sorry, Misha, but I've got my own work to do. I thought you and Shizune would be studying together over the long weekend anyway. Studying's too boring to waste a holiday on, Hee-chan. Shopping together was much more fun, wasn't it, Shi-chan? It's only now that I realize Shizune's been looking over to us, and that Misha's arms have been moving likely all this time. I must be really zoned out to not have noticed. What is it with girls and shopping, anyway? Even Lily and Hanako have dragged me out with them a couple of times. But you went anyway? It's so rare to see a guy that likes going shopping. Well, my role would probably be best described as pack mule. I can't say I share your enthusiasm about the experience. Back to the exams. You studied after you got back from the days off, didn't you, Shizune? Of course, Hee-chan. It's only sensible to study in the days before... Misha makes a sound vaguely similar to a dying cow as she realizes her folly and unceremoniously flops onto her desk, betrayed even by her best friend. Judging from Shizune's quite frustrated look at Misha, she probably told her to study, as she did. Don't worry, you can still gain some grades if you start studying now. Maybe. Misha does not seem overly amused. It seems the bubbly balloon of everlasting cheerfulness has been cruelly popped. Shizune's signing goes unnoticed by the moping Misha, earning her a quick poke in the shoulder. It takes barely a moment for Misha to get back into form. So what did you do over the weekend, Hee-chan? Just took a trip up north with Lilly and Hanako. It was pretty nice. I see both of them narrowing their eyes at me, their minds surely in the gutter. The fact that their suspicions are founded makes their situation all the more awkward. Stop hitting right click. We just studied and went sightseeing. There's nothing more to it. After such a friggant lie, I realize that may not have been the best step, considering Shizune's connections and her total lack of restraint when it comes to questioning someone she suspects of telling untruths. I really have no idea of how she's going to take it, but she'll find out eventually anyway. It isn't as if it's really her business whom I date, in any case. And yes, Lilly and I are going out now. When Misha receives the news with an enthusiastic smile, Shizune gives a look of mild surprise, somewhat masked by her cool demeanor. Whoever you date is your business. I hope you two go well together. Misha gives a look that says this is the most quarter I could possibly receive on the matter. That's all I wanted, really. After she says this, though, Shizune begins to sign something else, then stops herself and shakes her head at Misha to prevent her from translating. Normally, I'd think this strange enough, but the awkwardly casual wave Shizune gives before walking off with Misha in tow adds to my confusion. Shizune is hardly the kind of person to pull a punch or communicate without forethought. I shrug my shoulder at the duo's odd behavior and look towards Hanako's desk, but see that her chair is empty. She was definitely here before, so I guess she just didn't feel like waiting. I'll go grab some food alone, then. Walking down the hallway to the unused room that's become a second home to 3 students in particular, I mournfully look down at the plastic-wrapped salad roll and juice box in my hand. Cafeteria's food really is unappetizing. Maybe I'll consider this my penance for my recent indiscretions. Opening the door, I notice one less quiet figure than I'd expected. It's strange. Despite having known Lilly for months, I can't help thinking back to the very first time I opened this door and saw her silently sitting in the sunlight. Just as she did then, she slowly opens her eyes, unmoving as they are, and calmly addresses me. Good morning, Hiseo. It's afternoon, I think. Has Hanako been around? She skidded out of the class without me even noticing. Lilly cradles her cheek thoughtfully as I take a seat, my bag taking its place against the closest leg of the table, and my unsatisfying meal neatly set out in front of me. She did appear for a time. She said she had to study for the upcoming exams and left for the library. We find ourselves not entirely believing her words. Well, at least her intentions are in the right place. She is sweet, but she needn't go this far to let us have our space. I might talk to her about it sometime. Probably for the best. For a while we quietly eat our meals, Lilly elegantly nibbling on her sandwiches and sipping her tea as I eat what tastes like a garden sandwiched in dry dough. The atmosphere feels slightly strained, neither of us knowing quite what to say to each other now that the small talk has dried up. Eventually we both finish our food, with no conversation forthcoming for quite some time. Eventually, though, Lily's soft voice breaks the silence. A lot happened back there, didn't it? Again, silence. With both our minds on the same topic, though, I think I have my feelings on that sorted out. I know everything happened in kind of a hurry, but I don't regret anything that happened in Hokkaido. Not one thing. Hiseo? Slightly tense, I take her hands in mine, half to feel her, half to settle my own nerves. I stand by my words back there, Lilly. I love you, and I won't leave you. I only wish for you to think the same. She silently reflects for a long time, which feels like an eternity. Her reverie comes to an end as she takes one hand from mine, placing it over them as she leans her body forward and stands out of her chair. After a moment's hesitation, her face slightly pensive, her lips meet mine for a brief moment. My mind feels as if it briefly stopped at the moment, barely registering Lilly sitting back in her chair and smiling back at me with ever so slightly reddened cheeks. Hearing that makes me very happy, Hiseo. I would be glad to stay with you. Maybe it would be good to slow things down a bit compared to before. We still have school, after all, and our exams. She gives a mischievous giggle, which proves to be contagious. That might be a good idea indeed. Do you think you'll fare well on your exams? It's only one day until they arrive, as you say. I probably should have studied more, but I think I've got a good enough head to manage. That said, I had to bat off Misha and Shizune. Is your class as worried about the exams as mine? She lets out an exasperated sigh, all but confirming it. I'm thankful for the atmosphere becoming a bit lighter. I think so. I've already been asked for help by 2 of my classmates, and there'll no doubt be more. Think of it as your first training in being a teacher, maybe? That's probably a good way to think of it. On that note, how are you faring in your English studies? I remember it was far from your strongest subject, and the few sentences you memorized to speak to my mother aren't likely to help.
Damn, right on the mark.
You got me. If you don't mind, would you be able to possibly help in that regard? Please? It would be my pleasure to help you, Hiseo, but in exchange. She lowers her eyebrows at me. Her coquettish coquettish? Is that how do you pronounce that? Okay, I did pronounce it right. Coquettish. Also means exactly what you think it means. She lowers her eyebrows at me, her coquettish nature tentatively coming to the fore. No problem at all. You'd probably be better off with some help in your studies, though. She beams a smile at me, one of girlish victory that nearly makes me blush. I get the feeling she's aware of how to use her face to twist my judgment, so I should probably be more on guard. Here and now, though, a study group seems like an expedient way for both of us to shore up our more lacking skills. The school bell rings out, reminding us that time isn't going to stand still. Lunchtime's over already. It sure is easy to lose track of the time here. This room's so far from the other clubs and activities, not much sound can reach us. It's probably most of the reason why. The place far from all the others, alone with just one person whom she loves. As Lilly stands and collects her bag and cane, my thoughts are cast back to the time we spent in Hokkaido. Before I go, Aki and I are having a homecoming party in my room tomorrow. Will you be able to come? And back again. My schedule's free, so I should be able to make enough room in my study time to make it. Good to hear, Hiseo. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're back from Scotland. Once exams are over, we should have some more time to ourselves. Holiday starts soon after, too. We can start the holidays with Tanabata then, just as we promised at the school festival. She brings her hand to her cheek and laughs slightly nervously, recalling the events as I silently thank myself for managing to remember. It seems odd to see her react in such a way, though it's not like I never saw her embarrassed before. I'd better be going. Farewell, Hiseo. Bye. Whether it's out of habit or just a stubborn desire for one small fragment of normality, I hold my hand up in farewell just as I always do. At least I'm consciously aware that I'm doing it now. I think I'm beginning to see a bigger picture than I ever had before, not only with Lilly, but also my life ahead. The chains of my past are finally breaking. Alright. Walking up the now slightly more familiar corridor of the girls' dormitories, I can hear the faint sound of laughter coming from up ahead. It doesn't take long to identify the source as Lily's room, though the deep timbre of the female voice unmistakably belongs to not her, but to her sister. I rap my knuckles on the door with the usual 3 light taps, my hand barely retreating as the door swings open. Hey, Hiseo! Hey, hello, Lilly. Hanako? Hanako looks up tentatively, her hands buried in her oversized pink nightgown. From her side, Lilly turns sideways toward the direction of my voice and smiles. It would be a flagrant lie to say I dislike the sight of her in those pajamas. I catch Akira giving me a sidelong look with a knowing grin, to which I reply with a sharp glare. She takes the hint, shrugs, and walks back to the low table in the center of the room. As I go to join her, Lilly gives me a nod of greeting and starts pouring me a cup of tea. It's nice to see you again, Hanako. You've been getting around recently. Lily wears a look of concentration as a light brown liquid, carefully measured by her finger as always, flows from the teapot into the cup. It seems Hanako has taken up helping one of the people in your class with the newspaper club. Naomi, I think? Hanako gives an affirmative nod. Even after spending about 2 months in the class, I still have trouble remembering the names of those students I rarely talk with. It takes me a few mental contortions to connect the name with a face, but I eventually remember the girl that sits beside Hanako at the back of the class. Naomi Inoue, a fairly average-looking girl, except for her bleached blonde hair. Given her upbeat and straightforward personality, Naomi may have seen an opening to poach Hanako for her club when she inquired about joining one. Either way, it's nice to see Hanako broadening her horizons. When I first met her, the idea of her joining a club with anyone but Lilly would have seemed utterly laughable. That explained how busy you've been. Enjoying it? It's really interesting. As always, Hanako's far from being talkative. Some things never change, and it seems that Hanako's personality is one of them. She'll likely always be one to shy away from being overly social. Warned by the sound of crockery against the table as Lily gently places my drink in front of me, I thank her and take a long sip. Hanako and Lily are tending to their own, and Akira is quaffing a mug of strong-smelling black coffee. You're a lucky bastard, Hiseo. Huh? I can't help grimacing at her teasing smile, still visible on the edges of the mug pressed to her lips. Seeing my sister in her pajamas, there's a lot of men out there who'd like to be where you are. I've seen a lot more than that of her, not that I admit it. Akira. Hey, I'm just teasing. She leans over to me as much as she can, whispering with a sly little grin written on her face. And Hanako too, you perv. Hey, it was her idea. We both look over to her, face turned to the ground and her hands fidgeting in the lap of her nightgown. If it's Hiseo, I don't mind. This could be bad. I know Hanako's altogether too innocent to bother reading too much into such a thing, but the expression Akira directs at me is positively stormy. Akira, please. It seems Lily can sense Akira's sudden change in aura just as well as I, even without seeing it for herself. Akira slowly looks away from me, like an attack dog leashed by its owner in the nick of time, and breathes a sigh of relief. I can't think of a more appropriate time to try and change topics than around now. If you don't mind me asking, Akira, what do you do for a living? I've never seen you out of that suit. Thinking about what to do with yourself after school's over, eh? I'm a lawyer. For the most part, I work in the legal department of the Japanese branch of our family's company. The most boring possible answer, I suppose. Law's a pretty dry topic to most people. Kinda. Oi, you're not supposed to agree. Lily gives an amused giggle while holding her teacup and saucer, Hanako quickly joining her. This friendly atmosphere between everyone is something I'd missed while Lily and Akira were on their trip. The dealings I had with Hanako didn't help. I think just not having Lily around changed the mood. It's nice to be back. I missed you, Hiseo, and you too, Hanako. Same goes for the both of us. I'm guessing your classmates are happy to see you back. In a manner of speaking, yes. Akira's amused snorts shows she's well aware of Lily's attitude towards such figures of speech. I imagine she'd have to be, given how long they've been together. Oh, did you have fun in Scotland? From what I wonder why she's asking, it having been a quite while since they came back. Then I remember everything that happened. We've simply not had time to look back, what with the exams and our Hokkaido trip. Lily's face goes distant for a moment, and the fact that Akira's first reaction is to go over to her sister doesn't escape me. Nonetheless, she quickly collects herself. It was nice. We hadn't met our family in such a long time, so it was a wonderful reunion. Yeah, I guess that's right. Their house being beachside was the best part, though. From her dismissive tone, I get the feeling Akira doesn't like their family as much as Lily does. You only like that because you finally had time to play around. It's just 'cause I'm the better swimmer. I don't take after the athletic side of the family, that's all. Well, you can take heart in the fact you got height genes, at least. And the bust genes. That's not really the right kind of thing to say around others. Though Lilly pretends to scold Akira, she does so with an unmistakable, slightly cheeky grin on her face. I doubt Akira really minds that, judging from her nonchalant expression. Well, I don't either. Hanako's looking down and blushing furiously beside me. The sisters' antics aside, their parents really do lead a bourgeoisie lifestyle. It seems utterly divorced from the life that Lilly and Akira have lived until now. I suppose practicality must have made the decision for them. To have come from such a wealthy and well-connected lineage only adds to the almost noble air Lilly seems to have, though. It's a small wonder none of it seems to have rubbed off onto Akira. They really are as little alike as siblings could be. The only similarity seems to be their shared confidence, which can be both endearing and a headache at times. Most of the night continues much the same, with Hanako eventually leaving the Satoi sisters and me to ourselves as she heads back to her dorm room for a rest. For a while, only the barely audible sound from Lily's teacup and saucer can occasionally be heard as she slowly drinks. The silence is strained as Lily and I wait for the elephant in the room to be addressed. So... Lily dutifully puts her cup down, giving her sister her undivided attention. With Lily and me on one side of the table and Akira on the other, this almost feels like a judge passing down a verdict. I hear the two of you are going out now? I glance sideways at Lily to confirm her as the source of Akira's knowledge. She gives a gentle nod to Akira, which I mirror in affirmation. Deciding that this is the proper time and place to do so, and Akira being the closest figure to a parent Lily's had for much of her life, I bow deeply with my hands on the floor before me, and my head very nearly the same. I'll take good care of your sister, Akira. I promise you. See, he's a lovely young gentleman. She must have heard my voice coming from a lower position than usual. I slowly bring myself back up, my eyes tentatively looking to Akira from under my brow. To tell the truth, I very much doubt my suited judge will raise any objections. She's definitely the type to make her disapproval with others well known, something that lends her a measure of respect in my eyes. The old-fashioned kind, huh? Well, he's the kind of person I guess you'd go for. I don't have a problem with it, and I wish you two the best. Even if I didn't like it, I couldn't really do anything anyway. I offer a nod of appreciation to her as Lily gives a small sigh of relief, likely more out of duty than any actual belief Akira might have had any problems with us being together. I do wonder, though, how's the rest of the family taking it? Particularly the part residing at Yamaku. Have you told her? Smiles turn to grimaces as Akira grins downright evilly. Those closest know how to twist the knife best, after all. Putting up with it may be the best term for the situation. Don't you agree, Hiseo? Yeah, that sounds about right. At least she's being reasonable about it. Good to hear. That girl can be a handful at the best of times. We sent a few messages back and forth during and just after the trip, and she was already busting my trips for seeing my boyfriend when he came back after leaving Hideki for so long. She really does care for the little guy. I cast my mind back to Shizune's odd reaction after telling her about our relationship, but decide not to bring it up. It's no doubt simply born of their mutual antipathy, and Akira's comments only back that up. Well then, that's settled. Gotta get to work early tomorrow, so I'd better be off. She rises from the table with a grunt, her hand on her knee to push herself up. I just notice Akira's eyes linger on Lily for a couple of seconds before turning away, as she begins to take her leave. After she walks out the door, she stops and looks up, thoughtfully, before turning to us one last time. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to tell you. Use protection. Every time. I gag violently on the tea in my mouth. Contrary to my own, Lily's composure holds perfectly as she seems entirely unfazed. I'm kind of impressed. We are, don't worry. Atta girl. See us. And with that, she turns and strides away, a hand held high as she disappears into the darkened hallway, closing the door behind her. The most reaction I can muster is flopping forwards onto the table, completely drained of energy and truly exhausted by her. Lily's ability to hold her own against that suited devil is something I admire. She really is incredibly blunt. I don't think I'll ever be able to keep up with your sister's energy. As I feel Lily's soft hand come to rest on my own, I roll my head to the side to see her gently smiling. For a long time, we simply sit beside each other silently. Given her unquestionably unusual height, she is pretty much exactly as tall as I am, probably a couple of centimeters higher, if anything. Like this, she appears even taller. The feeling of her pale, soft hand against mine is a pleasant one, as is the sight of her thin silken pajamas she wears, showing her curves and collarbone. You do get on well, though, even if you say that. I guess. You two are a lot more alike than I first thought when I met you. Then it's a good thing I quickly stopped you from going after her, isn't it? Though she jokes about it, my assessment of my inability to keep up with Akira, either physically or mentally, was quite in earnest. Lilly's slow-paced and ladylike, almost motherly nature is perhaps the single thing that helped me most in my first weeks at Yamaku. Come to think of it... Wait, since when were we using protection? As I give a curious look to my side, Lily's cheeks puff out as she huffs at me. Unlike you, I remembered. The packet is in the cupboard next to the sink. I'm not the only one of us that takes a pill. In hindsight, I feel rather thoughtless for not remembering it all and leaving it to Lilly. Looking over to the cupboard she mentions, I notice again the knee-high piles of books around us that were here the other times I'd visited. For the most part, they're lined up against the wall to give a little more room around the table. Why don't you get a bookshelf for your books? It's odd to see books just piled around, especially given that your room looks so neat and orderly otherwise. They're easy to find this way. I know exactly which pile each book is in. Wouldn't you still know that after putting each set on a different shelf? That may be, but... So she's not immune to bouts of laziness after all. I have so many of them, it's kind of a shame we can't share our book sets, despite both of us reading so much. She gives a short giggle. Come to think of it, why do you order your books through Yuko? I imagine there'd be plenty of sites that you could order books in Braille from, especially in English Braille. A lot of text-to-speech programs, too. She turns her head slightly away from me, which strikes me as somewhat surprising. I'm just not all that good with computers. I'm all right with typewriters and braillers, but that's about it. Her tone almost makes me chuckle. She's a prideful person, so admitting something like that must be difficult. So Lily's the low-tech kind of person. Given her old-fashioned personality, it's not really a stunning surprise. I wouldn't worry about it. A lot of people aren't really that good with them, so it's not that unusual. That unusual. Well, she's even more depressed. It feels like I'm twisting the knife rather than healing her wounds. With a bit of squirming, I shuffle my way closer to her, tentatively putting one hand around her waist to hug her. I'm still not really used to this kind of physical affection, but Lilly seems to like it. Oh, I forgot about that, CG. Lilly smiles as she turns to face me, a kiss being the reward for giving in to her. She draws me in, brushing my upper lip with hers before pressing against both. This way, every one of my senses is filled with her. The barely perceptible scent of her hair, the taste as her tongue fleetingly touches mine, the tenderness of her lips, the image of her filling my mind, the total silence apart from her faint breath. We may have kissed before, but even if this is more a kiss of simple affection than anything, it's still a new and pleasant sensation. Judging from her vivid blush as she pulls back, it's obvious she feels the same as I do. Even if we're entirely alone, it still feels a little embarrassing to open up to each other this much. If we take everything day by day, I think that would be for the best. Small steps, right? Yeah, just small steps. We have plenty of time to be together, even after the school year is over. As long as we move together, I think everything will work out okay. Neither of us is going anywhere soon, after all. For now, I'm just thankful for the small moment in time we can spend together. Oh, I might have to go get more water. I don't know. I have no clue how much longer this is going to last. Alright. Alright, I'm going to go get some more water, so...
Alright, I'm back.
I stand unmoving in front of the door to the nurse's office for it feels like at least a dozen minutes or so. It's not like I had never entered the small beige room before, nor is it because of any feeling of childlike anxiety over the visit. Maybe it's because the nurse's office is akin to a confessional, an admission that my body is flawed. The knowledge that such a fact is kept entirely confidential between the nurse and me hardly lessens the fact. Remembering that the bell is to signal the end of lunch break will sound soon, I give a sigh and open the door. The burden will stay with me just this while longer. Well now, if it isn't Nakai. Good to see you. Or bad, I guess, considering I'm a nurse. He gives a small laugh, amused at his little joke. I find his humor lacking and somewhat off, but the fact that he can make light of such a situation is perhaps comforting, or at least distracting. His brief episode of entertainment over, he claps his hands together and gets down to business. I take a seat as he gestures for me to do so. I wish the classroom had seats this comfortable. I can feel my mind wandering as my eyes quickly scan the room, distracted by all the small changes since I last came. Alrighty, so what brings you here? I haven't seen you often, so I assume your health's been good so far? Well, mostly. I see. His smile drops as I trail off. I feel slightly guilty about it. It's these moments where I can't rationally call myself normal that makes me so reluctant to see the nurse. They're an admission that I'm different from everyone else. I was on a trip during the long weekend. I had a few problems with my heart. He hums very seriously and nods as he does so, urging me to go on. I think it was as I was walking a fairly long distance. I think the right term for it was a heart flutter. I suddenly went weak at the knees and felt almost like I was having a small heart attack, but it passed in about half a minute. Even after, though, I felt pretty fatigued and nauseous. Not good. Not good at all. That was how many days ago, exactly? Did you do anything unusual, aside from exerting yourself, before the episode? Were you taking your medication properly? The nurse switches from awkward jokester to serious health professional mode, rattling off questions, making notes, and calling up stuff on his computer. I tell him about forgetting to take my pills that morning and the preceding evening. It was a stupid thing to do, but I can't change anything about it now, except answer honestly and bite the bullet. His seriousness evolves into a frown, and the talk evolves into an instant checkup. I finish buttoning up my shirt, and again get motion to take a seat in front of the nurse. Is this the first heart problem you've had since coming to Yamaku? I've had short pains in my chest before, just a couple of times, but they were more discomfort than anything like this. He leans back in his chair, briefly resembling a white-colored poirot. I don't know how to pronounce that, as he mulls over the mysterious case of the heart flutter. Moving his lips from side to side to show he's thinking, his non-existent mustache wiggling, he eventually comes to the conclusion. Well, you survived it. That's always on the plus side. I blink at this one, then notice the nurse wearing his got you face. It's actually somewhat reassuring. I don't think he would crack jokes if things were really serious, so I keep silent and take my lumps. I'll have a talk with your doctor, but right now I suspect it's simply due to physical exertion. Have you been keeping up with regular light exercise like I directed you to? I make sure to walk a reasonable amount every day. It's usually enough to work up a bit of a sweat, but then again I'm not really as fit as I used to be. That should be enough then. The main thing to keep in mind is do regular, low-stress exercise, not short bursts of sprinting and such. I understand. Since leaving the hospital I've been a lot more focused on my studies, partly to take my mind off not being able to do more physical things. It's good to hear you're coping well. Sudden lifestyle changes can be hard at the best at times. I'm pleased to hear that you sound like you have everything in order. Almost everything, that is. Nevertheless, I want to keep a close eye on you for a while, just for observation's sake. Just to make sure things aren't going downhill. You understand? That's something I really didn't want to hear. Since coming to Yamaku, all I've wanted to do is live as normal life as possible. Observation was one of the words I came to hate most during my hospital stay. For so long it felt as if I could have just walked straight out the hospital doors, if not for that observation the doctors wanted so dearly. Sure, should I come in more often? He checks the calendar next to his computer, which seemed to inflict on him a nasty case of furrowed brow. He spins back towards me after that. The summer holidays are a bit of a pain considering the timing. I'll check with your doctor to try and get a better handle on the situation and see how he wants to proceed. But I think you should just take things slowly and carefully for now. What you're describing doesn't immediately sound like a recurring event, but it won't hurt to slow down a bit for a while, just to make sure. What should I do for today? He looks over my shoulder at the clock hanging over the door. I'd never have noticed if I hadn't followed his gaze. Daily time for school to be over, so you may as well just leave early. Gives me a sly wink, making sure that I understand he's doing me a favor. Well, nurse's orders. Thanks. That's what I'm here for, after all. I know you might not want to hear this, but you can't ignore your condition. Don't hesitate to see me if you have any further problems. If you just have anything you want to ask. Bye. He spins around and gets back to typing on the computer in front of him. I suppose I'll just read before waiting for Lilly by the gate, considering I don't have much else to do. Even as I leave, his words echo in my mind. My condition isn't something as limiting as many of the others here in Yamaku, and I don't want to burden Lilly with thinking about it. If I just live life normally and avoid any short, sharp shocks, I should be okay. I won't let my condition rule me. Lilly comes into view soon after the bells heralding the end of school ring out. She says farewell to a number of her classmates headed in the other direction before beginning her weekly trip to the convenience store. Afternoon, Lilly. The immediate warm smile and relaxed demeanor she assumes upon noticing my presence are unexpectedly welcome. Hello, Isao. Good afternoon to you, too. She hesitates for a second, but eventually deigns to tilt her face forward and close her eyes. My lips meet hers with a measure of slight trepidation before we move off, hand in hand. The fact that we're so close in height is somewhat useful at times, there being no need for either of us to turn our head upwards nor downwards in order to meet the others. It doesn't take much time to leave the noise of the other students far behind us, the tapping of Lily's cane in her free hand the only sound to be heard. Silence, blissful silence, is all that greets us while we slowly walk in the setting sun's light. I think I'm coming to really like this town. The huge green hilly expanse, the trees everywhere, the somewhat rustic little buildings. So you've come to appreciate the tranquility of it as well? I think so. I came from a metropolitan city near Tokyo, so the quiet of this town really alienated me when I first arrived. After a while, it became really nice, though. I think I prefer it to the hustle and bustle of my home city now. Would I prefer the quiet of such a rural town even when I first arrived? I suppose I had the advantage of growing up in a quiet area before I came. Hanako said the surroundings are very pretty, too. Lily may say such a thing quite easily, but each time she mentions how others describe sights around her as beautiful or pretty, I feel a little put off. I notice her expression becoming one of anticipation for some question or another. She always had a good sense for when somebody's not saying something that's on their mind, so I may as well speak up. I was kind of wondering how to put this. Do you ever regret that you can't see what things look like for yourself? It's just something I've been thinking about. She thinks carefully for a time. Do you ever regret that you can't hear people whispering on the other side of a room? I can only speak for myself, but the fact that I can't see is the only way I've experienced life. Just as I cannot do something you cannot do something that I'm capable of. The fact that the world is made for those who are sighted can be a pain sometimes, but there are many, many people who suffer much more than I because of the way the world is. That does make sense, but still, it just feels kind of bad to describe something that you can't experience to you. She tilts her head quizzically, as if I'd just said something that makes very little sense at all. But I can experience it. You just said yourself that you like the area because of the way the surroundings are. I like this area for the very same reason. Thanks to the fact that this is a small, rustic town surrounded by trees, it gives some peace and quiet away from the din at school, and the bustle, not to mention the smells, of the city. I suppose it would also be much like the home she shared with Akira as well. Her outlook on it is pretty sensible, and I'm not surprised that she's got a much better handle on her particular condition than I do on mine. Just like how her coming from a location somewhat similar to Yamagu's surroundings led her become more acclimated in a shorter time, being born blind affected her stance by her own admission. I should stop being so annoyed with myself over it, but I can't shake the feeling that I've depended on Lilly far too much, given the circumstances most have had to deal with in Yamako. It makes a lot of sense. You're pretty good at explaining, as always. Come to think of it, where is Hanako anyway? She was with us for lunch. It seems she's busy studying. The exams are far from over, and she said she wants to do better this year than last. I admire her work ethic. She's really been trying to give us a lot of room alone recently. She's that type of person, I think. The kind that puts others' needs above her own at every chance. She's a sweet girl, even though so much has hurt her in the past. I don't know. I feel like it's only now, when she's less close to me than ever, that she's truly finding herself. It was thanks to you that she began to feel more confident after all, not me. I take my hand from hers and gently place it on her head. The important thing is that you were there for her. I can't even imagine what she'd be like without having found someone like you. That much became obvious while you were in Scotland. We're all still friends, so we just gotta have faith in her. I think she'll become a good person. That much is thanks to you being there for her when she most needed it, just as you were there for me. It makes me feel a bit childish when you sound so wise. Well, I try. Are you doing anything on the weekend, by any chance? Nothing that comes to mind. Why? And how about a date on Sunday? It'd be something to do besides exam preparation. Countering my rapidly beating heart, she simply smiles and nods. That would be lovely. Where'd you like to go? Her face suddenly changes to one of disapproval. You can't do that, Hiseo. That's cheating. Do what? A gentleman should never ask a lady where to have a date. Oh. Her smile quickly comes back, assuring me that she's far from serious. Don't worry about it. I'll think about where we could go. I'll leave that to you then. I promise to decide on the next date, though. With our plans for the weekend made, the rest of the walk down the hill continues in silence. The prospect of that lasting for any length of time, however, is shattered as I catch sight of a familiar figure waiting for us, her hand held high. Yo! Thank you, please come again. The change in temperature as I step outside from the convenience store sent a chill up my spine. It feels like summer is starting to wind down. Looking to my side, the same feeling seems to affect Lilly as well, though unlike me, she doesn't manage to hide the fact. Something I didn't realize at first was how physically delicate she is, even compared to the likes of Hanako. If I had to describe her, I'd have to say that she reminds me of a China doll. Akira walks up behind her and gives a couple of hard pats on her shoulder, much to Lily's consternation. For a moment she looks as envious of my status as an only child as I am of their close relationship. They talk between themselves for a few moments as I sort out my bags, their voices too low for me to catch, but eventually they break off and we begin the walk back to school. It feels good to be out of that damned office. You kids don't know how good you have it here. Kids. You too, then. Kids grow up so fast nowadays. You're not old enough to say that. I don't know. Being around Hideki makes me feel so damned old. He's so precocious, he reminds me of you when you were younger. He's a nice boy. It would be a shame if Shizune comes to have too much an influence on him. Akira gives an amused snort at her sister's antipathy. She really doesn't seem to regard it as anything to make a serious fuss about, treating it more like a childhood spat. She looks over to me, apparently only just remembering that I'm here, and gives a small grin as she reaches toward her back pocket. What is it? Just a sec, let me dig it out. After quite some difficulty, she managed to retrieve her black leather wallet from her back pocket, quickly fishing out what looks to be a folded square of paper. With Lily all but unaware of what's happening, Akira unfolds the scrap and hands it to me. Oh my god, I forgot about this photo. An old photo of what looks to be a younger Lily and Shizune operating a noodle stand, a stall, with some other girl in the background. She looks vaguely familiar, but I can't quite pinpoint why. What is it, Akira? I think you know. Lily mulls this over for a few moments before realization dawns on her. Akira, you really needn't. It's fine, isn't it? Besides, it's like the only photo I have of you two since you entered Yamaku, where you're not at each other's throats. I look back down into the photo in my hand. It does seem strange to see Lilly and Shizune working together so diligently without any sign of animosity. If the photos of them during Yamaku's festival, that means it must have been taken 1 or 2 years ago. In other words, the time when they were both in the student council together. Who's the girl in the back? She looks kind of familiar. Ha! I knew you wouldn't recognize her. It's Misha before she dyed her hair all pink. That's Misha? No way. It feels extremely strange to see Misha without her so very distinctive hairstyle. Judging from Akira's tone, she doesn't take favorably to Misha's idea of fashion. I suppose the fact just accentuates how odd the situation looks. To think they were so friendly in the past. I wish I could do something to mend their relationship. You're being very quiet, Hiseo. It just feels kind of strange to see you all so friendly like this. Lily moves to say something, but stops herself. In the end, this isn't a matter for me. It's between Shizune and Lily, and nobody else. Things change, unfortunately. I hand the photo back to Akira, who sighs as she folds it up and slides it back into her wallet. A little memory, quietly hidden away, to be pulled out again sometime later. Yeah, that they do. Initially, I think Akira's reaction to be simply in response to the situation between Lily and Shizune, but she looks oddly glum compared to what I'd expect. Lily's expression is clouded as well. What's wrong? It's just that I'll be going to Scotland fairly soon. You're leaving for Scotland again? For a long moment, Akira looks surprised. It's an ill-fitting expression for her. After a glance at Lily, she turns back to me as if she'd never done so. Yeah, in a couple of weeks I'll be leaving for Inverness to work at the company's headquarters. It's a pretty big jump in corporate position. It's not a chance that's going to come again. So Akira's going to leave Japan on what seems to be a permanent basis. I can't help feeling that my assumption that we could all happily while away our days having fun in this isolated little world is coming to an end. It's unsettling. I look at Lily, mildly surprised that she hasn't told me such a thing, despite usually being so forthcoming. She continues to walk, with her face fixedly pointed ahead. I can't read her expression, nor can I even guess what's on her mind, which is discomforting given how it's usually easy for me to do both. It reminds me of the time when we met at the Shanghai, just before what could be called our first date. At the time, all I could do was comfort her without knowing the cause, and now feels no different. As we finally reach the school dormitories once again, there's a somewhat awkward silence. I don't think I'm the only one who feels it. See you tomorrow then, Lily. Bye, Akira. Good night, Hiseo. See ya. And with that, they walk to the female dormitories. Opening the door to the male dormitories, I stop and look back at them, just moments before their figures disappear behind the heavy wooden door. That was a strange moment when Akira said she was leaving. Well, that wasn't the first time when my thoughts regarding my new life had been called into question. It's perhaps the first time to do it quite so profoundly. I still don't know what to make of Akira's reaction, much less of Lily's. The night's chill reminds me to get back to my room before I catch something, my bags pulling down on my arms with seemingly redoubled weight. If nothing else, I have a date with her set up for the weekend. I just need to stop overthinking stuff and get on with things as they are. The exams are still ongoing after all, and with the trimester's end and the summer holidays beginning soon, there'll be plenty to keep me busy for a while. As I give a yawn and retreat inside, my thoughts turn to what Lily will decide to set as the location of our weekend rendezvous. This act is a lot longer than I thought it would be. Oh my god. Oh, this also has one of my favorite CGs. I have a lot of favorite CGs in this game. I'm pretty sure this is about the last thing I had in mind when Lilly said she'd decide where to have our date. No man nor woman is dressed in anything but their finest, their formality only matched by that of their surroundings. Rich red wallpaper adorns the walls as the city lights far below flicker and glow. Combined with the ambient hum of quiet speech and the high-pitched clattering of cutlery and wine glasses, the mood is very formal, yet relaxed enough for me to not feel too uptight, despite this being our first real date. Once we get seated, our waiter leaves to attend to others with a quick bow, after an appreciative nod from Lilly. Far from depending on my help, Lily's managed to navigate herself around surprisingly easily so far, despite the unfamiliar environment. A light brush here and there, and she's generally quite deft at orienting herself as needed. My eyes look to Lily's. I can tell from her face that she's listening to her surroundings just as hard as I'm looking. Though truth be told, my eyes are lingering on her each time they sweep across the room. The red cheongsam she's wearing accentuates her figure very well, shows off her legs. Even her hair is done up, and the scent of perfume is just noticeable. While my black suit may be a rental, I managed to select an appropriate one. It feels surprisingly comfortable considering I've so rarely worn one. It fits the setting just as well as Lily's attire. I guess this is a new experience for both of us, then. She turned somewhat sheepish. I've never come to such a place as this before, no. One hell of a first date, that's for sure. It's gonna be pretty hard for me to top this. A small giggle. Even now, our nervousness is dissipating. Her hand skates along the center of the table until it touches the menu, which she takes in both hands and brings to her face. Hiseo? She lowers the beige laminated sheet just before her eyes. I can see another sheepish look. I doubt asking the waiter for a menu in Braille would be productive. I can read it out for you, no problem. I take mine and give it a quick read, my small grin faltering. Perhaps there is. What's wrong? There are quite a few items on here, and I'm not completely sure how to pronounce a couple of them. One fine cuisine after another is listed. Most may be in Japanese, but a few are in English and French. I guess it's to be expected, but I have no idea what's in some of these. Oh, this one I recognize. Wait, hang on. You can cook that? A small giggle of amusement comes from behind the paper sheet. Well, I could read them all out, but it'd take a few hours. Is there anything with some kind of fish in it? Let's see. No. Aren't those poisonous? No. They eat that stuff? No. Oh, here we go. A tuna salad seems to be a good bet. From the picture, it looks like it'd be pretty filling as well. That seems to be a reasonably safe option. Let's order two then. I'm pretty sure a couple of these dishes are from poisonous animals. I've had enough deadly run-ins for now. Lily maintains a smile, but there's a distinct lack of laughter. Black humor mustn't be her cup of tea, though to be honest, I don't find it exceedingly funny either. There are certainly quite a few interesting smells wafting about. The same is true of the sights, I assume. I've never been anywhere quite like this. A fancy Japanese tea house on occasion or two, but never anything this lavish nor European in styling. Before another word can be said, a portly waiter in a distressingly tight vest appears at a table to take our orders. Provençal tuna salad and co-op, please. 2. I hope I didn't mess up the pronunciation of that too badly. Even if I did, he doesn't show it. And may I have a glass of Chardonnay, please, Hiseo? Oh, the same. Oh. If you have confidence, you can do whatever you'd like. At least when it comes to ordering alcohol. As the waiter nods and leaves, I suddenly realize what I said by absent-mindedly mimicking Lily's answer. I regret it pretty quickly. Alcohol. Only a bit. This girl has an odd propensity to getting hooked on things, I swear. Surprising that they didn't ask for identification. Then again, I guess we both do look mature for our age. I'll have to take your word for it. I'll add that this isn't what I call the type of place to ask such things, though. Good point. We both relax a little into our seats, trying to take our minds off the choking formality of the surroundings. As soon as we do, the same waiter appears at our table with 2 empty glasses and a bottle, the contents of which are quickly and professionally poured into the former. We both nod politely as he leaves, Lily taking her glass and gently moving it from side to side. The liquid inside glistens as it moves around in the glass, and I have to admit it makes me a little less regretful for ordering the same. I guess it must take effort to judge how the liquid inside is acting based only on its center of balance. Maybe it's like her origami, taking every little chance to practice her dexterity. I guess I'm not surprised that you would know about a place like this. Those who have money would, I suppose. This reminds me of just how completely different our upbringings were. In Yamaku, it's easy to forget about social and economic disparity between students, all wearing the same uniforms, living in the same dormitories. Well, Akudo's the one to tell me of it. She's come here before, apparently. So that's what they were conspiring about on Friday. And you chastise me for cheating. That's not cheating. It's simply making use of her personal contacts. If you say so. Still, I get the feeling that you're more familiar with this kind of restaurant than I am. She pauses a moment, a wistful look on her face, before softly smiling. The compliment seems to brighten her mood. You can thank my former school for that. If I were to appear any less, they'd be gravely disappointed. She has mentioned her previous schooling before, but now I am kind of curious. She seems to think a lot about her past, so I don't see any problem in asking. What was that like? It was prestigious, all girls, and Catholic. These facts made my parents choose it for me. Many wealthy families sent their daughters there. From how it sounds, life there must have been pretty strict. I wouldn't say it was a bad experience, but you're quite right, it was very strict. Thankfully, I managed to adapt well and make a number of friends. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for my sister. She found the atmosphere and religious aspects suffocating and ended up leaving for a job as soon as she was able to. She gives a small, self-deprecating chuckle. I shouldn't complain about it, though. Not many even have the chance to go to such a school. Do you resent your parents for sending you there, then leaving? She gently shakes her head. My family is highly patriarchal. My father, business always on his mind, was entirely lost as to what to do with me. In the end, he made the decision that my education was of higher priority than staying with the family. He simply did what he thought was best. To say such things so easily. What an unbelievable girl. That said, I'm a little surprised she doesn't think her blindness played any part at all, though maybe I'm being too harsh on her family. You're too kind-hearted, you know that? Most would hate their parents for something like that. Well, some do. Oblivious to my raised eyebrow, she takes a sip from her glass. The wine slips down effortlessly, her fondness for it evidently helping her deal with the flavor of alcohol. I can't say the same goes for me. What of yourself? What was your schooling like? Mine? Let's see. It was a fairly normal public school, I guess. Maybe a bit busier than the norm. I did quite well in class and played in the soccer club. Since I'm an only child and my parents both worked a lot, I wasted most of my free time and money at the arcade with my 3 friends. No matter how much I played, though I never did manage to beat Mai at any of those machines. Even Takumi and Shin lost her whenever they tried. Then I'd be left trying to be the responsible adult when Shin and Mai fought. Again. Just the 4 of us, aimlessly enjoying our childhood. Those were some pretty silly times. I catch myself as I realize that I'm starting to zone out. The days of my old school disappearing to the night sky and bright city lights outside the window. Lily's face is an odd mixture of curiosity and sympathy. Given her strict schooling, I suppose something like this would be an interesting contrast to the only life she's known. It sounds like your previous school was a lot of fun. I'm not really sure how much of it is nostalgia, but there are some nice memories. That's in the past, though. I can't go back there now, but through my accident I found a new life I never have imagined leading. The peace and calm of Yamaku, a new direction for my future in science, the friendship of Shizune, Misha, and Hanako, and most of all you. She gives a deep, genuine sigh as she moves her hands toward me, her fingers just lightly searching out my face before softly caressing my cheek. Her hand reluctantly retreats after a second of warm silence, as we notice the waiter arriving with our meals. Lilly does a deft job of covering her condition, except for the fact that her nod to him is slightly misaligned due to his silence. She really does seem to work hard at appearing as normal as possible in public. While I noticed it long ago, I still can't quite gauge whether it's a want or to not be treated differently, a slight sense of vanity, or some mixture of both. The dish served lives up to the salad name, and the portion's pleasantly large. With sliced eggs and tomato, it looks very enticing indeed. Lilly takes her knife in one hand and fork in the other, quickly getting to work on the dish as I do. It's later than when we usually have dinner, so we're both eager to dig in. My cautious skewering of leaves in vaguely meat-like squares with my fork is matched by Lily's silent and measured prodding and chewing. The occasional tap around the side of a piece of the food to work out its edges is the only giveaway to her lack of sight. I'm done with my meal in little time. Lilly takes the last few bites as I sit observing her. Finished, Hisao? Yeah, it was pretty nice. That much is very true. I never thought a simple salad could be so tasty and filling, but then again, I suppose that's why it costs so much to eat here. Content with my appraisal, and evidently agreeing, Lilly gives a small nod. You know, given that you're part foreign, exotic looking, and quite pretty, I'm surprised that nobody's ever confessed to you before. You're assuming nobody did? That simple statement takes me off guard. I shouldn't be surprised, given that I was complimenting her just moments before. Really? I've received several confessions, both in this school and my previous one. Adolescence is a funny time. She's kind of talking as if she's above it herself. Huh, how easily you say such a thing. Lily looks surprised for a moment before a playful smirk covers her face. Is that jealousy? What? No, it isn't. You're a bad liar, Hisao. You should take that into account. Then again, I do appreciate how sincere you are, even if you don't intend to be, sometimes. I think your honesty will always serve you well when dealing with others. I clear my throat in mock disapproval of this whole business and try to steer the conversation elsewhere. To tell the truth, though, I do prefer solitude to being surrounded by others. I don't think I could maintain a social circle like you do. She contemplates this for a moment. I don't think that's true either. I've seen how gentle and caring you are around Hanako, and you get on marvelously well with others, even with those whom you hardly know. I think you're quite adept at social situations. But on that note, what of your confessions, Hisao? I'm sure someone like you must have had at least one admirer. As I open my mouth to speak, I can feel my face turn slightly dour. At times like this, I secretly appreciate the fact that she can't see my expressions. Just one. Her name was Iwanako. It was when she confessed to me that I had my heart attack. There, in the woods, during winter. Lily finds herself speechless, not expecting for the topic to move into such an area. My condition has always been something of a concern for her, something that I strive to minimize despite my body's best efforts to the contrary. Afterwards, she visited me for a while I was in the hospital. For a week she came in and talked. It was usually just small talk or classroom gossip, but that was enough. But eventually, she just stopped coming. She was there every day, then every other day, then once a week, and finally, one day, she just stopped visiting entirely. Did you ever see her again? Wrapped in my own little world, I shake my head before remembering the futility of the gesture. Okay, so we save here, and we make a second save because you will receive a new ending if you answer this differently. But for the good ending, as you'd expect, you don't want to lie, mention the letter. The memory of that single letter Iwanako sent me comes back to my mind. I never saw her again, but after I was sent to Yamaku, she wrote me one letter. Lily shows an expression I know well. I've piqued her interest. I'd be slightly offended that it's simply a matter of curiosity for her, but she's never been very good at masking her reactions. In hindsight, it really didn't say much. What was going on in my old class, how she was faring, and almost as an afterthought that it was probably best for the both of us that we don't see each other again. After reading it, I ended up reassessing a lot of things I thought I'd managed to work out. For the most part, that letter reminded me that the world around me was still moving, and just how much I'd become isolated from it. And I guess it also reminded me of what I'd lost. She gives the information some thought before her face lights up in realization. No doubt she's worked out that it was this letter, which had contributed to my angst during that lunch on the rooftop. It's a rare sight to see Lilly quite so lost for words. Her entire persona is a little deflated from her earlier rapt interest. As charismatic as she is, in the end, that isn't any replacement for life nor relationship experience. Perhaps it is better she sent it than not. How's that? It can be difficult to work out how best to communicate with those you haven't met in a long time. All the more so, considering your separate situations. Instead of doing what was easiest, she built up the courage to talk to you one last time, not only for her sake, but, from how it sounds, for yours as well. Maybe. I don't hate her for it, not that I ever really did, but I don't know. Probably a more non-committal answer than I should give, but it isn't without cause. I never looked at the situation from Iwanaka's perspective like that before. Seconds pass in silence before Lilly speaks again. Moving to Yamaku must have been hard for you, having your friends and even your girlfriend taken from you, for no fault of your own. The worst of it passed while I was in the hospital, when all that surrounds you is 4 white walls and a small television. Your mind takes on a life of its own. It's like my old school, I guess. I just try not to dwell on what's happened and keep thinking ahead. All that reminiscing does is get me down, and it's largely thanks to you that it feels like things are finally getting back on track. That's pleasing to hear, Hiseo. She lowers her face slightly, her expression pensive. I guess I went too far and embarrassed her. I suppose you went through something like a bit like what I did when you entered Yamaku anyway, right? I imagine the vast majority of our school students did, after all. You said yourself that you made friends in your old school. I can't imagine many followed you. Lily's deep smile drops, her expression unexpectedly darkening. Even her hands retreat to her lap. After a long while, she speaks. Hiseo, can you promise not to tell anyone what I'm about to... I promise. She looks slightly taken aback by my serious tone, but then relents and smiles weakly before continuing. When I moved to Yamaku, I did regret losing the friends I'd had at my other school. But there was one person whom I most regretted not seeing again. He was the reason I took up English as a future career. He? Considering she came from an all-girls school, that can't have been a schoolmate then. I rejected the confessions I'd received until then for him. Every time I improved my English skills, his praise was my most treasured reward. It's funny, isn't it? Someone like me, able to boast about the people who have set their eyes on me, liking someone so utterly unattainable as my tutor. It truly is the most ridiculous thing. Did you? She quickly shakes her head from side to side. I couldn't. Even then, I knew it was impossible. Silence reigns over both of us. This does seem to explain her ardent focus on her future in teaching English, but I can't help thinking of her confession to me. She lost him without ever letting her feelings be known. Did she somehow fear that would happen again, but with me? I don't really know what to make of it. I've heard of such relationships before. Taboos born of such things as puberty and youth. The fact that she had the good judgment not to act on it, though, is heartening. I know this must sound strange, but please, don't think of me. Why would I think any less of you for that? To be honest, I think he must have been a very nice person if you liked him so much. Not only that, but you stopped yourself before going too far. For a moment, she looks somewhat lost. Most unexpectedly, though, it isn't a second before she starts to laugh. The sound takes me off guard. It's not a giggle, nor a restrained chuckle, but honest and genuine laughter. I found myself smiling, and not just at her display of relief and happiness, but for her to trust me enough to let me see this most private of her secrets. Before I realize it, I feel her palm touching my face. Her touch as gentle as ever, with her thumb slowly stroking my cheek. You're kind, Hiseo. I really do love you. Seeing her face like this, with her palm gently caressing my face, I think tonight has been a wonderful night. I guess we both had pretty weird pasts, eh? I think by most our standards, our present is rather odd as well. I smile and hang my head. This woman can easily run rings around me. Of that I'm quite sure. I look back around the room with its continuing quiet hum of patrons. This place probably fits into the odd category, too. It is a tad overbearing. That's one word for it, yes. Catch the eye of a scurrying waiter, a short, scrawny guy no older than 20. He kind of reminds me of Kenji, though unlike him the waiter isn't dressed for winter during midsummer. After a curt bow and an offer to remove our plates, Lilly asks for the bill politely and softly. With expert coordination, he maneuvers around the tables, our plates in hand, to retrieve our bill. In no time he reappears to the door, smartly handing our bill to Lilly, who promptly hands it to me, causing him to raise an eyebrow. As I read the small computer-printed leaflet, the cost is considerably more than I expected. Hiseo? Oh, I quickly stammer out the amount to Lilly. I quickly stammer out the amount, to which Lilly merely nods and reaches for her purse. Giving her card to the waiter, he disappears once again. That was a disproportionately large amount of money. The statement seems to make Lilly slightly uncomfortable. My family leaves more than enough for my education. The same goes for my sister, though she dislikes being reminded of that fact. That said, I too dislike throwing money about. But this one time, I think I can make an exception, just for you. Not only did you choose our date, but you paid for both of us as well. I take the bridge of my nose in my fingers. I can't believe how high you've set the bar for our next date. She gives a small giggle. I'll be looking forward to it, Hiseo. The waiter reappears beside us, as if by magic, and hands Lily's card back to her. Evidently picking up on her lack of sight, he places the card in her hand with an extra, perhaps unneeded amount of firmness to make sure of her grip. Leaving, he exercises a measure of diplomacy by keeping a neutral face despite my own expression. Clapping my hands together, I stand up from my seat in order to bring an end to our night out. Shall we be off then, milady? He fucking miladied. Okay, seriously, how much more of this route is there right now? It's 2 in the morning. I'm actually going to do something that you probably wouldn't expect. Just want to double check that that's there. Main menu. Extras, library. Oh, that's a lot. Nope, we're stopping right here. Oh, that's a lot more than I expected. Holy shit. Well, that was over 3 hours, so not bad. We made it through a lot of the game, but oh, that's a lot of CG. That's a lot of scenes left. Also, if I check the gallery, we're missing a bunch of... Yeah, we have a lot more of this route left. I forgot about that. You'd think, after Hanako's route, all this stuff happening compacted right at the end, it fools you a little bit. You think that, oh, this'll be... Like, we're totally coming up at the end. No, all of the NSFW happened in the 3rd act. There was still a whole nother act. My god. We're missing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 Act 1. But yeah, for this we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, We have like 8 plus. We have not started this yet. Because, yeah, with Hanako's, I mean, Act 3 was a little bit long, but Act 4 wasn't too long. Good lord. So, yeah, like that. I'm going to end it here for tonight. Whew. I did not expect to stream till 2 in the morning. Have we unlocked? Actually, I want to check this too. We're still missing one song. We have, yep. So, next stream, 100%. Part 9 is going to be finishing Lily's route. There's no way around it. We're finishing Lily's route there. There's not a way around it. But I had one thought I did want to like talk about a little bit. That last scene made me think of. This scene, you'd think this would be the kind of game where, you know, you think this isn't super relatable. I mean, if you're a non-disabled person, you'd probably be thinking this isn't really that relatable to me. I mean, there's a few things, but I don't see how this could be super relatable. It's a good story, but you didn't think everybody's had that similar kind of thing that Hiseo was talking about. In that, talking about his past. It comes, I don't know, maybe I think about this because it's not been that long, but leaving high school. 4 years there, usually with your closest friends. Sometimes you can stay close friends with people after high school, but like, sometimes you move away. I mean, I can speak from my own experience. 4 hours away from where I grew up, where I lived where I went to high school. I've barely talked to anyone. This year, especially, I've barely talked to anyone I went to high school with. It's not exactly sure how exactly I feel about all that. You know, it's just, life is constantly moving. Things will constantly be changing. Said a lot in this game. Time never stops. You can never really. Time will never stand still. It will always keep hurtling forward unrelentingly. You'll have the memories, but sometimes you can never go back. I guess. Because I played this game before I had finished high school. I was a very, very. Much different the last time I played this game. And I certainly appreciated it for what it was when I first played through it. I couldn't exactly relate to much of the messages about change because I had never gone through change in my life before. Not much had changed in my life, but looking at this now, like, having experienced the change of going somewhere completely new and doing everything completely new again, it hits a lot differently. It hits a whole lot differently now that, you know, I have more life experience. I hope you guys have been able to feel that as well, like experience what the message this game is trying to get out. A little bit of a sadder topic to end a stream on, I'd have to say that, but I think it's being able to reflect on things, I think is a good thing. I think having that inner reflection is nice. So yeah, with all of that, tomorrow's stream, I'm not exactly sure what it'll be, but it'll definitely be something. I'll have to think about that tomorrow while I'm at work, but yeah, it should probably be earlier in the evening than this stream was. Definitely not 10:30, 10:45. And then another Thursday will be another late stream. I'll be working late Thursday night, so I'll come back and we'll finish off Lily's route. I won't start the next route. I'll finish Lily's route and get the neutral ending, and that's where I'll end the stream. I don't want to start a new route in the middle of a stream. I want to segment it well enough. So yeah, maybe I'll look through my Steam library for something to play tomorrow, and then Thursday will be Katawa Shoujo again. Friday, I'll have to see about that. Saturday might be another no stream because I have the same work schedule I did last week. And then Sunday will be another probably late afternoon stream. I think Val and Novella are doing another Ace Attorney thing or something like that. So yeah, that's how the rest of the week looks. If you enjoyed, please do leave a follow. If you're watching this VOD on YouTube, please leave a like and subscribe. Please follow me on Twitter at AriaOfTheStar to keep up with whatever things I'm tweeting about when I'm really bored. The YouTube channel is AriaOfTheStar. The VODs will be up on there for longer than 14 days. So go back and watch them. I put everything into little playlists so you can now watch everything. And yeah, have a great rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, wherever it is where you're at. Be safe. Have fun. Thank you again for coming out. And I hope to see you in the next stream.